Well, hello everyone. I'd like to get this meeting started. This is the regular Board of Education meeting for Monday, December 18, 2017. And I'll call this meeting to order. I know we're all chipper and very eager to get this meeting going and completed because I think we're probably on the eve of a lot of vacations. So I'm sure you're all looking forward to some time off out there. And if you're not, well, I am. So we'll get started here and get moving right along. So, first item on the agenda tonight is the recitation of the vision statement, which is every school will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready. All right, so first item on the agenda tonight will be public appearances, and we do have a few. And the rules, if you don't know them, is that you do have 3 minutes. Don't have to use them all. You can use any portion of it, but try not to exceed the 3 minutes. And so I will call up the first speaker and mention who the second speaker will be. And so the second speaker, please be ready to approach the podium as the first speaker departs. Okay, we have 3 minutes, and the first speaker tonight is, well, and you give me a hard one right off. Is this Sophia Contrek? Is that Sophia? Sophia Perez Conrad?
Conrad, yes.
I got 80% of it, so don't hold it against me.
No, you're good.
Okay, followed by Matt Spatek. Please.
All right. My name's Sophia Perez Conrad, and I came from the Monona Grove District, and I transferred to La Follette for my freshman year, and I entered in Pathways, and it's just been a really good experience for me so far. When I grow up, I want to be a nurse, and I thought the Pathways gave me a good opportunity to, it gave me lots of support in accomplishing that. Just so far has been really, really good. I have a really a smaller learning community, and I really like that. I get to become really close with people in my class, all of my classes, and I get to become closer with my teachers. So also it allows me to feel more comfortable speaking, like tonight. So yeah, I just think the Pathways is such a great program, and I'm so glad that I joined. So thank you.
Thank you. Matt, followed by Sarah Larson.
Hi, just a little background. My name is Matt Splitek. I am Sophia Perez Conrad's father. I grew up here in Madison on the east side, graduated from La Follette High School only a year ahead of the current principal, as it happens. Went to college here at UW-Madison, studied English, went abroad for most of my 20s, came back to the States, studied law at Yale, and then came back to Madison again. My wife and I have settled down and are raising 3 kids here. We live in Monona, but as Sophia mentioned, at her request, we opened and enrolled her back into the Madison district so that she could go to La Follette, as I did a long time ago, and specifically so that she could be a part of the Pathways program. My wife and I, and Sophia as well, what we wanted and want is for her to be a part of a diverse community of learners that is preparing her for success in college and beyond, whatever she chooses to do eventually, whether it's to be a nurse as she wants to be now, or something else, who knows. And from what we can see, she's getting exactly what she and we wanted for her in the Pathways program. She's been in there for only a semester, but it's been really clear how engaging she has found her studies there. We've heard about her studies of the health issues connected to the Royster Corners cleanup that were embedded in all 4 of her core classes in the Pathways program. We heard about her reading Just Mercy, the book about the criminal justice system, in her social studies class, her history class, to connect their study of Reconstruction to contemporary issues. I know when I walked through the door here, Sophia insisted that I meet her beloved English teacher, Mr. Johnson, who she was so happy to see. She's able to take classes outside the Pathways program that interest her as well, and I know that she has adored her American Sign Language class throughout the semester. And so my wife and I, we're just thrilled with how it's going for her at La Follette. And Dr. Cheatham, I thank you for creating this community at the school, the high school that I went to, and that my daughter is now going to and enjoying so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Larson, followed by
Hi.
Jacky Gonzales.
The item that I'm speaking on has apparently been pulled from the agenda, but I thought I'd speak anyway. My name is Sarah Larson, and my husband and I have 2 daughters in the district, one of whom receives special education services because she's on the autism spectrum and has other learning disabilities. We fully support the district's commitment to creating an equity-based resource allocation model for special education personnel, but we oppose the district's proposed $165,000 contract with DMG as the chosen vendor to perform this important work for 2 reasons. First, DMG has been staunchly criticized in the media for developing cookie-cutter solutions that are not tailored to individual districts. Their plans are so general that one district fired them because it could do the same work internally. Why would we want to spend $165,000 on a cookie-cutter approach? Our district has already incorporated many of the best practices that DMG says will improve special education. In developing our new special education plan, the district here has already performed this type of systematic analysis that DMG says it will provide. We don't need DMG's expensive diagnostic to tell us that we should be doing what we're already doing right. Also, why do we spend $165,000 on hiring DMG when the district already has an established relationship with UW-Madison, one of the country's best universities for teaching and researching special education methods? We should be tapping into the local resources that share our values instead of paying for an expensive contract for a Massachusetts firm with no ties to our community and schools. Second, and more importantly, DMG is known for proposing controversial cost-saving measures that hurt the most vulnerable students with disabilities. DMG advocates for eliminating many of the special education teachers in the general education classroom and instead clustering the most high-need students in segregated resource rooms. The special education students who do remain in the general education classroom would then add to the general education teachers' already crushing workload. It is clear that DMG's approach does not address or meet the needs of all special education students and might even violate federal law, which requires the least restrictive environment for students with disabilities. Moreover, DMG's philosophy does not align with our district's vision for inclusive special education. DMG's top consultant, Nathan Levinson, authored a 2012 study in which he denigrates special education in the public schools, characterizing it as a costly, dysfunctional mess, replete with excess staff that bloats budgets. Page 27 of the 2012 report makes clear that he views inclusive education and social emotional learning as excess fluff, instead of an important piece of my daughter's education. Mr. Levinson also says on page 18 of that 2012 report that special education budget crisis in our country is in part due to, quote, vocal parents who adore small classes and extra help for their children. Well, if I'm a vocal parent, then so be it. But I don't think that federally mandated, legally required, quote, extra help for my disabled daughter is a luxury that can be cut in the name of cost-saving efficiency. We are dismayed that the district would even consider hiring DMG, given their leader's assessment of how special education students and staff should be treated. We can think of a lot of better ways to spend $165,000, such as hiring more special education teachers and support personnel. My husband and I urge the board to vote no on the DMG contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacky Gonzales, followed by Dana Shackle.
Hello, my name is Jacky Gonzales, and although it's not in the agenda for tonight, I'm here to talk about Nuestro Mundo's charter renewal. I attended Nuestro Mundo Elementary School throughout my whole elementary school career, and I can genuinely say that this school has impacted my life in multiple ways, inside and outside of the classroom. Nuestro Mundo gave me an opportunity that I will forever be grateful for, the opportunity to learn in 2 languages. As a kindergartner, learning in English and Spanish didn't seem like anything special, but now, as a senior in high school, when I stop to remember where I come from, I am amazed with all of the opportunities Nuestro Mundo offered me and continues to offer its students. Allowing kids to develop a different perspective of the world and opening up social and cultural doors for them is something not a lot of schools can highlight about themselves. With the community built of teachers and students, Nuestro Mundo works hard to prepare its students for academic success that will translate into workforce success. When I was in elementary school, Nuestro Mundo shared a two-story building with another school. The building was split in half, with one side for Nuestro Mundo students and the other side for the other school students. I remember there was never really a sense of community between both sides. We would always have our school events on different days, like our family nights, our music concerts, and even our 5th grade graduation, which created a disconnection between both schools. With the current school building Nuestro Mundo is in, the staff, students, and parents have built a family in which everyone feels as they belong and everyone is free to be themselves. As a current 1st grade leader for their Puma Scholars After School program, I always look forward to going to work because every time I set foot through those doors, my mood instantly shifts from tired and stressed to energized and happy. All of the teachers and staff are welcoming and friendly and help form a comfortable and working environment. Although Nuestro Mundo may have gone through some changes since I was a student there, working with the teachers that taught me as an elementary school student reminds me of the family it gave me. As an elementary school student, I remember looking up to my teachers and wanting to grow up and become a teacher just like them. Now, as a high school senior preparing to walk across the stage this upcoming spring, my passion for education has only flourished. I hope to graduate college with a degree in elementary education and get the opportunity to give back to the community I grew up in. Thank you.
Thank you. Dana, followed by Cruz.
My name is Dana, and my daughter Merritt is in the Pathways program at West. Merritt went to Franklin Elementary and Hamilton Middle School. She had been a really happy kid until around 8th grade when she became very anxious and started to ask me to not go to school. The Hamilton social workers gave her a lot of support, but she was still terrified to go on to an even larger school for high school. Last January, she was persuaded by a friend to apply to the new Pathways program. I was nervous for her to try something new. Her older brother was in his 3rd year at West, and he had been having a very good experience. Now, after almost 3 months as a freshman at West, Merritt is now comfortable and more confident. She enjoyed the integrated poster project, and she loves her health sciences occupations class. She has an interest in nursing, but mentioned she might change her mind and be a lawyer someday. Her 3 core classes have connected the theme of social justice for all. Merritt is now motivated by concrete ways that she could make an impact as a future college graduate. She appreciates the familiar faces in her Pathways classes while still meeting other kids in math, Spanish, and gym. Next semester, she's excited to take 2 different art classes as well. I believe Merritt will graduate high school with a better understanding of what path she's going to want to take, while still having all the paths open to her. I wanted to thank the MMSD staff that have developed the program, as well as the parents who provided constructive feedback to improve on the idea. I also really want to thank the West staff, Ms. Kankakee and Ms. Shactathorn is here, for providing such a smooth transition for her into high school. I believe that all of these people have made my daughter happy again, and I really wanted to thank you.
Thank you. Cruz, followed by Jen Greenwald.
Hi, I'm Chris Carusi. I'm a parent at Memorial and Jefferson, and I have a few things on the agenda I want to talk about. The first is the proposed class size policy. I first want to thank you for the really good changes that happened over the course of this week to that policy, particularly the cap on teaching loads for core courses. That's a very important improvement. But the changes that happened this week didn't go far enough. I think the policy needs to better define high poverty and what that means so that we can maximize class size reduction in places where it's going to have the most impact. We know from research that high poverty kids living in high poverty situations and African American children are the most likely to benefit from class size reduction, and we should try to target those kids as much as we can. We need to reduce 4th and 5th grade class sizes at high poverty elementary schools if we're truly going to make a difference for kids. We need to add an optimum size of 30 for specials classes at the high school level. Just having a maximum of 40, I think, puts us at risk of having specials and electives at the high school level that are really large and trying to cut costs by increasing the size of those classes, which is not okay. I also think we need to give high school principals discretion to have classes with fewer than 15 students. I'm kind of concerned that classes like women's studies and social justice and restorative justice probably started out small and grew as students found out how awesome those classes were. And if we were to say classes of fewer than 15 are cut, which the policy says, we'll lose those classes, and that would not be good for the district. I think some of these issues could be addressed through amendments tonight, but I think the definition of poverty is complicated enough that it might make sense to delay this vote until January and try to get that definition right. I also urge you to vote no on the proposed land purchase on the far west side. The piece of land that is being proposed for that elementary school is only half a mile from Olson, which is not even full. So it feels like putting a school a half a mile from Olson Elementary School is a really bad idea. And I think we learned in Monday's board meeting that we have much higher priorities right now for new buildings, and we should be investing our money there. And finally, it's really awesome that we have lots of families here tonight to talk about Pathways. I looked at the numbers of enrollment from last spring to now for Pathways, and it looks like there's been almost a 12% drop from what the enrollment numbers were at last spring and where they're at right now. And in addition to hearing from all the folks here today who are probably going to tell us good things about Pathways, it would be really good to find out why enrollment has dropped and people who have left, why they left. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen Greenwald. Okay. Sue Pastor. Followed by Nana Morelli.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'm here mainly to talk about the land purchase of land for a school in the Acacia Ridge neighborhood. I have to tell you, I was shocked to find this on the agenda. I looked at the board docs. I discovered the offer to purchase from December 13th. Today is December 18th. As a resident and a taxpayer, I need to know what the rush is. There seems to be an issue of potential transparency there, and I think you want to be known as being transparent with decision making. Maybe there's something that we don't know, but besides an issue of transparency, I think there also seems to be an issue of equity. Who are the new residents of this yet to be built development? What is the cost of that housing? And who else in MMSD has been waiting a very long time for a neighborhood school? Finally, as a resident and a taxpayer, I'm deeply uncomfortable with subsidizing developer profits. Of course, it is much more lovely to buy into a new neighborhood where you know that there's always already planned to be a school for your children, and that's assured. I'm thinking of the situation at Grandview Commons where people moving in, buying in, were promised a library that Viridian actually donated the land for. And I'm wondering if we have to pay, what we have to pay, why we have to pay it by then, and how much we are subsidizing developer profits. So those three kinds of concerns are first and foremost in my mind right now when I think about this surprising item on the agenda. And I also want, while I'm here, to urge you to delay the vote on the class size policy. We stand to benefit so profoundly from reducing class size for those students who are most in need of that benefit. I've been reading Joy DeGruy-Leary's book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. I am very persuaded by her claims about the importance of relationship to African American children, the importance of identifying those children, the definition of poverty, looking at 4th and 5th grade, making sure we get that right. I'd love to come back in January and hear you talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Nana Morelli, followed by Beener Morelli.
Brianna. Hi, good evening. I'm Ananda Morelli. I'm representing myself and a parent of my daughter Brianna, who is at La Follette High School. I remember when my daughter was in 1st grade and she wanted to be a babysitter. When she grew up. As a first immigrant in this country, it has been very important to expose my daughter to different careers. Before Pathways, Brianna wanted to be an architect, but her grades were so-so. After getting into Pathways, she went from never wanting to read to loving her English class with the fabulous Mr. Johnson. Brianna is now in honors class, has a job with a health advocacy group, and wants to become a doctor. Yay for first-generation immigrants in this country. Lastly, I hope MSD continue to look at innovative ways to increase academic opportunities for students of color and students with IEP. In regards to the DMG, I trust that you make the best decision for the most vulnerable children in this district, which are often missed in these meetings. And to be very explicit, they are students of color, our African American and Black students, and our students with IEP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brianna Murilli. I attend North Shamundo Elementary, Senate Middle School, and now go to La Follette High School. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Pathways. If I said the Pathways was the most wonderful thing in the world, I would be lying. There's never one thing that has no flaws. Yes, this was a good choice to introduce to Madison Metropolitan School District, but like I said, there's always something to critique. Again, this is my story, not saying that everyone in the Madison High Schools had my experience, but I started Pathways with a bright mindset and eager to learn. Starting off the year, I was in an earned English class, like my mom said, which means you decided at the end of the term if you wanted that honors credit or not. A couple months passed, and I decided that I wanted to get bumped up to full honors class, and I honestly think that if I wasn't in a Pathways English class with a Pathways teacher, I would have not had that courage to get bumped up to that honors class. Now I'm in all honors classes, but that's not the only thing. If you didn't know, all Pathway students have a health exploration class, which was half an elective. I couldn't tell you about the other school's health class, but the one at La Follette High School was kind of a roller coaster. Class wasn't very organized, to be honest, and our teacher quit halfway in the year and had multiple subs to replace her. Going into this class, I was thinking it would be a hands-on experience and having multiple classes with full learning activities, but I'm pretty sure we only had two hands-on experiences. I understand that this is only the first year of Pathways and you're working things out, but Pathways has its challenges as a student. We have to commit to half an elective, and not having that elective to do art or language class is something that I would have liked, but I could say that it was a challenge worth taking. I'm glad MMSD is looking at ways to make school relevant to me and my peers. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Cunningham, followed by Michele Monton.
Hi, I'm a parent at Hawthorne Elementary and East High School. I'm here representing myself. I'm sure you all can guess why I'm here, and that is to talk about the new class size policy. Thank you for taking the time to refine it. I know that we talked about it last summer in terms of budget, and some of you had said we should talk about it as a policy, and I really appreciate that. However, and I'm sure none of this will be a surprise either because I've written to all of you, I am going to request that you delay a decision on this to take the time to ensure that you get community input and get it right. I understand that you feel you need to rush a vote to get in time to make the decisions for next year, but I think you can probably rely on what you've done in the past to decide for next year, because the policy as it's written seems to once again cut allocations to K-3 high poverty, which it seemed like most of us were in agreement last summer that that is of highest priority, because most of the research shows that reduced class sizes for K-3 high poverty has not only benefits in student performance at that age, but also once they get older and go into larger class sizes. I requested that some of you talk to teachers that administrators that you represent in my East Side elementary schools. I work with a lot of parents in the East attendance area in general, and I'm not sure any of you did that. I'm sure that some of you did not. Because the class size, I know that we were trying to get a lot of information about what the class sizes actually were, and it was really difficult to get that information, and sometimes we could only get it by all asking parents at each of our individual schools, which is insane. You should be looking at what are the class sizes, not averages, not ranges. What are the actual class sizes, and how will the changes that you're recommending impact our schools? Because if you're looking at how to redefine poverty, which perhaps you should, I think that this will hurt our K-3 high poverty schools once again. In the last 10 to 15 years, those schools, our school has a 70% poverty level. Over 40% of our students speaks English as a second language. I've seen the policy go from 15 cap to 16, to 16 to 18, to 18 hard cap, to +1, +2 flexibility, which I hated. And then when the budget came through and it looked like you were going to take that away, and now this policy says 20 max, that's not acceptable for K-3 high poverty. So I hope I'm not burning bridges, but I really hate this policy hard, and please delay and talk to more people. Thank you.
Thank you. Michele, followed by Faye Marie Philpatrick.
Good evening. My name is Michele Mouton, and I'm the parent of a current 7th grader and a high school senior. I'm speaking tonight because I remain concerned about the timeline of the rollout for personalized pathways. It seems that MMSD administration is continuing to push for a very rapid rollout of pathways in the high schools that will alter and has already begun to displace the current curriculum and some talented teachers. That accelerated timeline is being promoted without any meaningful metrics available as to whether the Pathways program works to address legitimate concerns. Does Pathways improve student GPAs? We cannot know after just 3 months. Does Pathways reduce the achievement gap? We cannot know after 3 months. Does Pathways improve SAT, ACT, and MAP scores? We will not know for several years. Does Pathways improve graduation rates? That won't be evident for 4 years. It appears from the demographic data to be presented tonight that the initial cohort of Pathways students has double the percentage of English language learners and double as many low-income students as the high schools itself. That data only reinforces widespread parental concern that Pathways is really a form of tracking or job training in disguise. It has been clear for some time that MMSD administration is pushing hard on Pathways, producing glossy brochures, selling the idea to students at school, emailing parents to tout its purported benefits. A dollar amount has not been disclosed, but just the sales and marketing campaign for Pathways must be a very large number indeed. And yet, there is no evidence that Pathways will do what the district administration hopes it will. Until such a time as there is some evidence that Pathways works, we would urge the board to take a measured and deliberate approach. Wait until some metrics are available before rolling out any more Pathways. Keep in mind that while Pathways might be a great program for some students, and I completely am sympathetic to the people and enthusiastic about the people who have spoken tonight and are having a good experience, this does not mean it is necessarily a good program for all students. The vast majority of MATA students do well in our current schools. Please do not jeopardize their education by rolling out Pathways before we have sufficient evidence that it actually does what we think it's going to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Faye Marie.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Faye Marie Filipiak. My daughter is Megan Cohen. She's a freshman at La Follette, and I'm here in favor of the Pathways program, and just had a couple comments to make real quick. First of all, right off the start, I guess I can mirror the comment that that Brianna Murley made when she said about the health sciences class. My daughter had the same experience with the teacher quitting, and even when the teacher was there, it was just rather boring, and I would like to see some improvement in that area or some kind of change there. Second point I wanted to make is, I guess, some of the critics were saying that this Pathways was going to limit the students or was in some way or pinhole them into certain careers. And I just like to say that I think rather than limiting them, I think it's actually an expansion. We went into this with our daughter with the idea of it really doesn't matter what she wants to do after high school. This is going to open her eyes to the area of the health field. If she likes it, great. If she finds out she doesn't like it, that's great. It's, she's taking the same courses and getting the same information as all the other students, but they're bringing in the extra information with the health piece of it. And finally, my last point is I just wanted to mention something that the students have mentioned, and I sat with the Pathways ambassadors at dinner tonight, and they mentioned to me something that happened that I don't know if you folks know about, but since the teachers are all working together with their curriculums and the students are kind of moving in the same groups, it's kind of created a little community among them, which is a very favorable environment for learning. The students know each other better. They feel more confident to speak out and speak up when they don't understand something. The teachers know the students better, and the teachers of the Pathways speak among themselves and to find support for students in different areas. And this kind of community is what we all want. This is the kind of community that actually they talk about when they want to keep classrooms small. And so this is something that I don't know if it was intentional, but I think it's a wonderful thing that's come out of the program. I know it's very early, and I just want to say that I do support Pathways and hope the program will go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our public speaking section for tonight. So thanks to all the speakers. Okay, we'll move right on, and the next item on the agenda tonight is the approval of minutes, and I'll move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular meeting dated September 25th, 2017. It's been moved and second. Questions or comments? Seeing none, Lori, advisory vote, please.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, next item on the agenda, Board President's announcements and reports. 100 Black Men of Madison and United Way of Dane County organized the second annual gift drive, Christmas for Children with Responsibilities. The Madison chapter of 100 Black Men partnered with United Way of Dane County, organized the gift drive, Christmas for Children with Responsibilities. This drive started last year because many of our teenage students fight hard every day to balance their classes, jobs, home, and responsibilities. The gift drive is specifically for Madison High School students who are the primary caregivers for their younger siblings. These high school students will receive care packages that are assembled and discreetly distributed in order to give to their youngest siblings. Donations for this drive are accepted now through December 20th from 8 to 5 p.m. at the United Way of Dane County's office and Group Health Cooperative. The board would like to thank Floyd Rose, the president of 100 Black Men of Madison, their wonderful organization as a whole, and the United Way of Dane County for helping support our district teenagers and their families this holiday season. So thanks to 100 Black Men and United Way. Secondly, accepting years 2 and 3 of the CUNA Mutual Group Community Schools Grant. CUNA Mutual Group awarded the MMSD Community Schools the full CUNA Mutual Group Community Schools Grant totaling $500,000 in November. Now, this grant was written as a 3-year request, which was originally granted on a 1-year initial investment. CUNA has awarded MMSD the remaining $417,870, which will allow us to continue the work of community schools as well as increase the number of community schools in the district. Now, the board would like to thank CUNY Mutual Group for their generous grants to help improve our community school initiative. Thanks to CUNY Mutual. And that concludes the board president's announcements and reports for tonight. And next on the agenda, superintendent's announcements and report. Superintendent Cheatham.
Thank you, Board President Howard. I'd love to invite the crew that's going to help me with this presentation tonight. Why don't you guys take a step up to the stage and we'll get started as soon as you get settled. Welcome, everyone. All right, do we have enough? Yeah, we're good. Okay. Welcome. It's good to see everyone. I want to say just a few words. I'm going to pass it right over to Cindy Green and our team that will be presenting on personalized pathways. I didn't expect that we would have any guest speakers on this topic tonight, so it was lovely to hear some of the stories and experiences that our students and families are having, and look forward to sharing more of those stories tonight. We see this presentation as an opportunity to bring you up to speed on some of the highlights of implementation. No decisions are being made tonight. This is really a celebration of the progress we've made just in the last few months. As you all know, there has been a pretty amazing collaborative effort underway to get Pathways off the ground, which is a collaboration of our staff and our principals and our students and families and central office staff, but also a collaboration with Madison College, the UW, Edgewood, the Workforce Development Board. I won't list all the partners, but just to demonstrate the point, it's pretty special that we're actually here talking about it happening. It's actually happening now. We're not out of planning, the planning phase. So I'll go ahead and pass it off over to Cindy to do introductions and get us going.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very thrilled to be here tonight, but more excited to have you hear from many of our members that are actually in our personalized pathways on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to do a little bit of introductions and then I'm going to go ahead and start. We have Trayvonna Jordan, who is a 9th grader over at Memorial High School. Sean Storch and Victor Johnson, both from La Follette, our principal from La Follette and our English teacher from La Follette. I think we heard a little bit about the English teacher. We have Vivek, who is a 9th grader over at West High School, and we have Dawn Cunningham, who is a parent of an East High School 9th grade personalized pathways student. So a wonderful group here with us. And as I start, when I turn it over for everyone, just to make sure you're able to turn your mic on when the time comes for you to speak.
I think they should be on already. Just make sure you hold it close.
And Laura, I don't know if maybe Dawn and them could use yours closer. Okay. So our meeting outcomes for tonight, as Jen said, we're going to share some accomplishments, and we're also going to talk a little bit about some of our implementation challenges that we've had to date. You'll be able to hear firsthand experiences from the members up here and kind of what they have experienced to date, and we'll also talk about some of our next steps. Just as a reminder, Personalized Pathways is really built to make sure kids are mastering content, but just as importantly are these other 8 competencies that we have up here that we are ensuring that is kind of threaded throughout our Personalized Pathways, and that students will be leaving us not just knowing content, but these other 8 non-cognitive skills. Our guiding principles, this is just a reminder, these were co-constructed with over 60 members of our high school reform collaborative, and really the guiding principles that built our personalized pathways that's being implemented today. Our personalized pathways is really built around these 5 tenets that are threaded throughout academic and career planning, our program of study, personalized student supports, experiential learning opportunities, and small learning communities. As each person speaks later on, you're going to be able to learn a little more about what this looks like in action. Here is just a reminder of what a current 9th grader who is not in Pathways, kind of what their course of study looks like, and then a student that is in Pathways. You'll notice, as was spoken earlier, students take a health science occupation class that kind of connects them to their health services pathway, and then the opportunity for their integrated projects and the experiential learning opportunities that connect them to their classes as well as to the theme of the school. Our enrollment updates. To date, 423 students across our 4 comprehensive high schools, and then you'll see a demographic breakdown there as well. A little bit of an update. So as you know, Madison is part of a Great Lakes community of practice that is partnering with 4 communities across the area. So Columbus, Ohio, Rockford, Illinois, and then northwest suburbs of Illinois. And it is not just the school districts that are part of this, but it is actually the entire communities, from their post-secondary institutions to community partnerships. We've been part of this work for the last few years. It also comes with grant dollars from Joyce and the Joyce Foundation. The most recent update we have is that we hosted here in Madison at the beginning of December, and we had all 4 communities come together where we learn from each other and with each other. We're all in different stages of the implementation of Pathways, but we're learning side by side. And we had an opportunity to have them see what Pathways looks like in action over at La Follette High School. I won't read the quotes for you, but you'll see that there was really great enthusiasm and a lot of learning that happened. I think something that is exciting is that we just learned today is that we received a notice that we are getting 2 more years of funding from the Joyce Foundation. So not only are we able to continue this community of practice, but we're also going to have the dollars to support it. And again, this is not just about the school districts learning together, but the entire communities coming together, which is really what Pathways is about. So excited to announce that. So as I mentioned, we have a variety of people up here, and they're going to tell you a little more about kind of their experiences to date. So first, this idea of academic and career planning, which is really where each student within the personalized pathways creates an academic and career plan that focuses on who they are, where they're going, how they learn best, and where they see themselves in the future. One way that we are doing that is talking about ambassadors, which is really a leadership opportunity that kids are able to experience through the pathways. We have 45 ambassadors across our 4 comprehensive high schools. They are our leaders, and here is Trayvana, and she's going to talk a little more in detail about her experience as an ambassador.
Okay, so I chose the pathway because I wanted to be a doctor, and now I'm learning about being a pediatrician, which is a doctor who works with children, and I chose a pediatrician because I love children. And at first, I wasn't thinking of applying to be an ambassador until one of my teachers told me that I would be a great candidate to be an ambassador. And ambassadors travel to Nashville in November, and we learned about the other ambassadors who were really respectful about their learning and very mannerly in a way. They opened their doors for their guests, and they were just very respectful. And they were very dressy, formal, and they were very professional about promoting the pathways. And based on our trip from Nashville, we got some ideas about what outfits would be good and trying to be more formal and taking on a serious role of promoting the pathways. Thank you.
So next is, we're going to hear a little more about experiential learning opportunities, and Vivek is going to share a little.
Hi. I'm very honored to talk about what I think is one of the greatest educational ideals to have been established in the recent times, the healthcare pathway. This personalized pathway will prepare and expose high school students to a broad range of college, career, and community opportunities that were never imaginable before this day. Recently, we had an emergency medical technician come into our health science class to teach us about medical emergency procedures like CPR, pulse, and blood pressure that he performs on a normal basis. We also had many other guest speakers like dialysis technicians, veterinarians, and cardiologists come in to educate us about their respective specialties. Also, we had medical students from the UW come to our school with organs. I greatly enjoyed that experience, aspiring to become a medical student in the future myself, and it is one of the moments that made me glad that I'm a part of the healthcare pathway. It was also a great experience for all the kids because we were able to tie in what we have learned in our past classes to physical anatomical organs that used to be part of a living human once. It is experiences like this that will stick in our minds forever and give us experiential knowledge that will help guide us through our bright futures. Thank you.
Now we're going to hear a little more about the small learning communities from a parent perspective as well as from a teacher.
My son is at East. Is this working? I just pull it a little closer down. So my son's at East. He is not as enthusiastic about the medical field. He joined more because of the small learning communities and it's been really great so far. Right away, I felt like the staff knew my son and us as a family, and it was apparent not only just like at the beginning of the year, but like one of the first examples is he was going on a field trip, which he was also excited about for this program, was the field trips, and so he like forgot his slip a couple of times. I had to email the teacher. And it was so clear that the teacher knew exactly who he was. She told me, make sure he talks to his French teacher because he's gonna miss French. And she was just like on top of it. And at conferences, my son he actually likes all of his teachers, which he tends to tell me when he doesn't like things more than he likes. So that's wonderful. But the one that he bonded with the most, that he really built a deep trust level with, the teacher was really honest about the pros and cons of the program and my son trusts him a lot. We got him for a conference, and I think, and from talking to other students and parents, like another girl in the pathway said her teacher requested her specifically, and so it's clear that the teachers are collaborating and that they're building bonds, individually. And when we went to the conference, the teacher didn't just know about his class, but he knew about, I was confident he knew about how my son was doing everywhere. Even though my son's not necessarily interested in the medical field, I feel like he's going to be ready when he gets out of school because of the whole collaboration piece. It's really nice that this program is less segregated than the rest of the school, and that when they're collaborating, they're getting different ideas, and especially as they talk about social justice issues, where they're talking about food insecurity with their project. And people want to hire people not just because they're smart, but because they know how to collaborate and work with different people, and they have a good attitude. And I think this program is helping with that. And then socially, we were really nervous coming in because his friends weren't signing up for Pathways, and he's really maintained his friendships with his old friends while making new friends in the program because the class sizes are small. He comes home talking about new kids, and it's been going really well. I think Ananda's daughter did a beautiful job. She probably touched on some of the same things my son would. There are definitely some things to work out, but the small class sizes and the collaboration is amazing.
So I'll speak to that from the teacher's perspective. One of the biggest strengths of this for me is not only the small learning community of students, but the fact that I consistently collaborate with the same 6 colleagues. So we have 2 meetings per week. One of those meetings focuses on curriculum development. And I think research shows that when you give teachers the time and the space to collaborate and create curriculum together, that great things happen. It also increases my sense of what it means to be a professional in a field that is oftentimes deprofessionalized in some ways. So sharing that time, that ability, that knowledge with my colleagues has been really fruitful. Plus, we use that time to talk about our students. Like, I know what is going on in their classes. I will talk to a student and be like, hey, like, I heard you gave an awesome presentation in your social studies class. They're like, Mr. Johnson, how do you know that? I'm like, we talk about you, But so the sense that we are talking about them, we're learning about them, we care about them, and that we're wrapping around them. And then I think that segues into the second meeting that we have every week, which is more of like a support meeting for students. We come with a list of students who we want to praise, students who are struggling that we need to support even more, and we brainstorm as colleagues. We work with social workers, we work with counselors to make sure that students are getting what they need. And because it's a smaller group of students to focus on, we can actually deliver those supports and follow up with our plans on a weekly basis, as opposed to past where teaching outside of a pathway, it often felt like I was teaching on an island, and when I tried to like extend, messages to, try to get support for a student, I didn't always know where it was going to land or how it was going to be followed up in the students' other classes. So it's just nice to have that time and space to collaborate on a regular basis, and know that we're actually getting student support that they need because we're all focusing on those students. And then I can speak to our integrated project work as professionals. So we started off the year with this integrated project about a community health concern, just like in La Follette's backyard. And what we really wanted students to walk away with was the knowledge that right off the bat, they can be like community health leaders, and that they can look at the space that surrounds them and make important decisions and ask important questions. And also we wanted to expand on the idea that health is an expansive thing, and that it just isn't limited to this idea of like going to the doctor and getting like a bill of health. So we worked hard to look at what standards do we all teach in our different classes, how can we tie those together, how can we reinforce what we want students to know, how can we make connections across curriculum, and then how can we have students collaborate in order to have an experience that communicates that learning is just not limited to the walls of the classroom. So this experience culminated in students interacting with community health leaders in like a panel type situation where they interviewed these adults and advocated and gathered information to make decisions about like what does it mean to be a community health leader, what does it mean to have a healthy community, and they saw support in all of their classes as contributing to making sure they were successful with that.
So at West High School, the integrated project was a large-scale project that took work from all of our Pathways classes and incorporated it all into a poster presentation that answered an essential question. The essential question that I chose was, who are we as a community? I chose this question because our community defines who we are as a person. The main goal of the integrated project at our school was to examine our essential question through different lenses, ranging from a biological lens to a historical lens. While doing this project, we also tied it into the healthcare field by presenting it using the scientific process. First, we made a hypothesis regarding what our predictions about our community were. Then we collected data using a historian's, a writer's, a biologist, and a health scientist's perspective. Next, we were able to synthesize our data into an analysis and a conclusion regarding health equity and social justice in our community. For my individual project, I was also able to explore my dream job as a cardiologist by looking at its job growth in Madison. This way, we were able to look into our personal future interests at the same time. The integrated project was a great way to incorporate all of our Pathways classes because as we combine different points of views to look at a specific topic, we get a deeper understanding on how every subject is interrelated and all aspects of the society have a large impact on everybody in our community. The projects that we do in the healthcare pathway, like the integrated project, are not only for us students in high school. It is for our entire community as Madison. Thank you.
So I want to say first the strengths of our Pathways program are our students. Clearly, they bring a passion and enthusiasm here that's remarkable. Secondly, Victor, who you've heard his name, you're going to remember his name for a while now, because our real strengths are our teachers. And that's not just true at La Follette High School, that's true in all of our schools in the Madison School District. And specifically the way our teachers collaborate with and learn with and from each other and use their collaboration time to connect with each other and connect with students. You can imagine Victor bringing his passion to his teacher professional learning community, and he's representative of the teachers in that community and the strengths that they bring. There's so much learning that they learn with and from each other. It's remarkable. That leads to them building relationships with each other, but also with our students. And we know that relationships with students is a driver for them to feel comfortable to ask questions from teachers, ask questions from each other, build that close sense of community, which leads to better study habits and improved outcomes. The impact a student like Victor has over the course of a student's career in education is incredible. This 1 year that they have with him will last for years to come. When we also talk about student-led conferences as being a strength, That's really the marriage of these, where our teachers are collaborating together to set our students up for success, to be owners of their own learning and present their own learning to their families and to other public audiences to really celebrate their growth together. The challenges really will come with scheduling. At La Follette High School, we have one extra elective, not just 7, we have 8 credit earning opportunities because we have a 4-block. We have 90-minute classes. However, as we transition from a 4x4 block to a AB, we notice that there are some complications that we're going to have to work through, and we're going to have to address that through scheduling. Facilities and space is also a complication. I wasn't alive in 1963, but I know exactly what La Follette High School looked like, because it looks like that today. Right? And I was a student there in 1992 through 96, and it looked the same as it does today. And I was a teacher there in the early 2000s, and it looked the same as it does today. So there are some minor tweaks that we've done to our facilities at La Follette High School, but as we enter into this age of pathways, we're really going to need to develop our lab spaces and spaces for our industry partners to really feel presence and partnership at La Follette. And finally, our time for planning is incredibly important. Talented teachers like Victor need time in collaboration with his colleagues in order to grow this program. And the more time that we have available, and the more community partners and the more staff members that we have in the Pathways program, the more effective their collaboration is going to be.
Thank you, everyone. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about next steps, and then I would love to open it up for everyone to ask questions of our panel here. We are in the process of continuing recruitment for our next cohort of 9th grade students, and our application window closes on December 21st, so a couple more days, but we are in our application mode right now. We are continuously working around teacher professional development. Our teachers come together, but as Sean said, I don't know if there's ever enough time, as this is new and they're thinking about integrated projects. We're always rethinking and thinking differently about the teacher professional development. And last, as we come back to you in April for a more formal update, so look forward to that. So at this time, I would just love to open it up and hear what questions you may have for me, or probably more importantly, for all of the wonderful people up here.
All right, Mr. Merckx.
First, let's start with Don. Can you describe one of the things that I know that East High in general is doing? One of the continuing frustrations has always been the conferences. And I know that Pathways in general in East High and East High University is supposed to be highlighting students-led conferences that are both longer and deeper. And if you can talk a little bit, and you mentioned it, then can you talk a little bit about your experience with that and kind of just walk us through, and also glad to hear your son is doing that's the on tomorrow.
Thank you. It's hard for me to tease out sometimes what's great about these students, great about Pathways. And so in the student-led conference, I spent time talking with the teacher about that. But the student-led, we did have a student-led conference for Pathways. I don't know if everybody did or not. And it was really great that it was, he had things to cover. He had like a format to cover. And some of it, like when he was reading the verbiage, that's clearly like district verbiage.
The boilerplate.
He, of course, was really sarcastic with that. And it was funny, and we rolled through that part and got to the real meat of the conference. So, but the conference still did give us, I mean, we still were able to cover everything that.
Was it one teacher? And
it was one teacher. It was the teacher that he's really bonded with the most, and us. And then we had the opportunity, like, we could still sign up for other conferences. And so like when we had open house, we hadn't met the French teacher, so we signed up to meet her. And other than that, I didn't feel like we needed to meet with anybody else, because when we did the open house, we met everybody except the French teacher that night. So I feel like I really do feel like we know everybody and everybody knows us, and there's open lines of communication. And the student-led conference, you know, we got to all the meat of it, and it was good. So I don't know what to compare it to. Yeah, but it was good.
Dawn, what was the length of time on the conference?
The time on the conference? Yeah. I think it was, with the French teacher, it was just like 10 minutes, which was more than plenty, because I was a leader. And I think the student conference was maybe 20 minutes. I don't know.
Is that how I'm supposed to be?
25 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah,
25 minutes.
I recall
Better than the,
15% budget down.
yeah. And just to clarify, student-led conferencing, it happened at all 4 comprehensive high schools within the personalized pathways.
And Victor, so number one, congratulations on being a love teacher.
Thanks.
I want to ask you, are you teaching sections outside of pathways or just exclusively within pathways?
Sure. So with La Follette's block schedule, I teach 4 sections of English 1 in the pathways, and then outside of that, I teach English fundamentals, which is a ESL class for students who are usually new to the United States and learning English for the first time. That's outside of the pathways.
And just for having a discussion later tonight about teacher roles and class sizes, what are your class sizes just within the pathways?
My pathways class sizes are 28, 25, 25, 27.
Relatively large.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's all I know. But I think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing in other schools some of the pathways English classes are much smaller. That surprises me. The final things I want to talk about is pathways grows. This collaboration you have with your 6 colleagues within pathways of the SIC seems to be working really well. It reminds me of Wright Middle School grade level teams that work together really tightly, and things like that. Now, will you remain doing 9th grade, and that team will stay together as Pathways expands, or what's the case?
Yeah, I believe that's the plan. Since we're gaining momentum with this curriculum that we're planning, I think like continuing to have expertise with the freshmen and with this curriculum that we have planned would be like the most beneficial. So I know that there's like a separate 10th grade Pathways team in formation right now that are preparing for the future sophomores.
And then one question, I think this is probably for Cindy, but I don't know for sure.
Let's see.
I don't know. I was looking at, we're at this point where we have very little data on Pathways. But one of the things that I looked at what we have in terms of 9th grade track so far and comparing Pathways, non-Pathways, and what I saw was that the following in the East High School, it seems that the on-track numbers, particularly in 9th grade failures, are slightly better than within Pathways than outside of Pathways. At Memorial and West, it appears that they are more than slightly worse. And I guess that one is that that you have a sense of why this might be, and number 2 is what's your team doing about this, I guess.
I can start.
Yep, go ahead.
So specifically why? No, 9th grade on track data we are continuously looking at as a system and continuing to develop processes within schools. My team, what are we doing about it is we are working with our high schools, our principals, our teacher teams, our assistant principals on a regular basis, analyzing data, thinking about action plans, and continuously monitoring it. We do know that quarter data is a great indicator for us of just a progress update, but not the final piece. So each one of our schools creates action plans in terms of where they are in their progress and what they're going to do between now and the end of the semester. We just had a meeting on December 1st with all of our 4 comprehensive high schools to talk specifically about 9th grade on track data, so we'll see what happens at the end.
Did the non-Pathways comparisons discussed?
No, we did not. We looked at 9th grade as a whole, and we look at it by department as well as across, but we did not do a Pathways, non-Pathways.
Yeah, and I would just reinforce that we think that is too soon to be any indicator. 1 quarter of grades. There's some interesting good news that we want to explore more. Some things that are concerning 9th grade on track, as you all know, is a major focus for us for every 9th grader. And that's a whole other presentation we could have on the systems we put into place for 9th grade on track.
Okay.
So I've got a handful of questions as well. I guess maybe most for the students, but feel free to weigh in if you're not a student. What would you say is the most different thing, I guess, about kind of being in a pathway versus not?
So for me, there was a lot of differences. So I came into the pathways being very motivated because, as I said, I want to go into medicine when I grow older. I think some of the main differences is that there's more connectivity between all the classes. There's more connectedness and cooperation. we can tell that all our teachers are working together, and one teacher references what we learned in another class during our class. And I think when everything comes together, it helps students form a better understanding of the entire world. Like in normal classes, we study something in math, which is totally or something in social studies, which is totally different than something in English, which is different than science. But in the pathways, we tie it all together, and I think that really helps us form a concrete and solid understanding of all of our subjects simultaneously.
Yeah, I agree with Vivek's statement. I believe that like the traditional high school, like I think that like most of the teachers, they're not like really connected, and they don't really know what's happening in all the other classes. Where in pathways, all the teachers are connected. They know what's the homework in like other classes. They know like everything that's happening in other classes and in their classes, which is very good. And before I came into the pathways, I wanted to be something different, and it wasn't like related to medicine at all until like I heard about the pathways, and I'm like, okay, like in 8th grade I was thinking of being a doctor or a nurse, and then like I came into pathways and I knew that there was like more different choices for me, so yeah, I really like it.
And what do you think students not in pathways would say about it? What's the kind of the other word on the street? Yeah.
So I think like people like that are not in pathways think that you're not gonna be like still with your friends and stuff, which is like not true. Like you have like enough time to be with your friends in high school, which is like really great. And I think that like people that are not in the pathways are like thinking that like the pathways are like making you like want to be in medicine. It's not really it's like a choice. Like you get to make, don't have to decide yet about what you want to be yet, because like I know some people that do not know who they want to be yet, and they're in the pathways. And yeah.
I agree with whatever was said so far. I also want to say that there's a common misconception that the pathways is kind of like preparing you for going into medicine and medicine only, but I believe that is false, because I have many friends who did not want to go into medicine. I feel the pathways is more something that exposes you to new careers and lets you look at what's really out there. It's not a typical school classes where you just pass your classes and then look at your future in other times, but you really get to understand what's out there at this time, and I feel that's a really good aspect of the pathways.
Yeah, we had pizza with some of our students earlier before coming here, and it came up. So I said, well, what do other students at La Follette High School think about the pathways? And they said, well, there's either one of two reactions. One is, what's pathways? Or two is, And they're like, they have no idea how awesome this is. And we have to do a better job at sharing these really great experiences, because there's some really cool things happening.
So I've heard you talk about a couple of different kind of themes, right? One is certainly around connectivity, which involves time for teachers, right? One is around smallness of either classes or communities, which again involves kind of investment. And then the third is kind of experiences, right? So whether that's kind of lab equipment or relationships with industry partners, et cetera. What do you guys think is the thing that, like, what's the one thing that we need most to make it successful?
Okay. So, I mean, this is kind of a tough question, because all of these aspects are so, they're so tied together. I feel like connectivity between each classes helps you form all of the other aspects that you were talking about. I think really forming a good collaborative group within and a good community helps you achieve more things as you go through high school. And I don't know if I can really come down to one, but I feel like all of them lead in together for the good aspects of the pathway.
Well, I agree with your statement, and I'm really like tongue-tied right now. I don't really, like, I'm not really sure of how to answer that question. Yeah, that's good.
Well, I think one of the things that we highlighted with our strengths was teachers, right? And giving them the opportunity and the time to talk with each other and to develop the Pathways program, because it's really the integrated experiences, as you're pointing out, that drive this program forward. It's the small learning community, the relationships that we build between our teachers and our students, the rich critical thinking and problem solving that happens when kids come together around real world applications of their knowledge. Many classes at La Follette High School have really deep experiences and connections with kids, but there's only one place in the Pathways program where they all come together in support of students really understanding their place in this world. And that's what we really need to get at.
I mean, maybe my last question, just to throw over the fence, is have we ever gotten a cost estimate of kind of what a more fully deployed Pathways would look like? That may have happened before we joined the board, but so I mean, we're making an investment in time for collaboration, right? That theme has come up a lot tonight. Have we ever made a cost estimate of what that would look like kind of at scale?
Something of the sort. I'd have to go back a couple years. We definitely did some cost estimates back when we were originally conceptualizing things, and other than that, we have our kind of multi-year sort of scale-up, which is in the budget document, but we certainly can talk about that some more.
Okay, Mr. Loomis, then Spandamila.
Yeah, it's always a treat to have our students come and talk to us up here, so thanks for coming. I don't know if I'll ever need a pediatrician again. I'll probably be needing a cardiologist some point. I wrote your names down, and I'm going to be asking for you too. I've got grandchildren coming probably, so anyway, but thanks for coming. It was really cool of you, and for your comments earlier too. Nobody's bridges ever get burned here, so don't ever worry about that. So I'm really interested in the integrated projects, and particularly the one at Royster Clark. So could you speak a little bit about how you, that particular project, you incorporated healthcare concepts into a development project? Now, I happen to know a little bit about that project, so I know that there were some peculiar things that had to get done. So could you try to just explain to us, so that other people that might be listening could understand a little bit more of the Pathways concept of looking into the community and sinking our kids into the community to really analyze and take apart a project that would relate Royster Clark development to a healthcare field.
Sure. So the Royster Clark development was an old manure plant on the east side that was vacated, and the plot of land and the old factory building sat there for a long time. And it was recently, a few years ago, there was interest in redeveloping the land. And there are, I think, obviously health concerns about having a vacant building on a busy street on the east side. I know there was actually like injuries that happened with kids playing in this lot. Also, it was discovered that the soil on the lot was contaminated, not once but twice, even in attempts to put fresh soil in. So what we wanted our students to look at—
They had to do it twice.
Yeah, they had to fill it twice. What we wanted our students to look at was this community issue through different health lenses: environmental health, looking at the soil; community health, what it means to have resources coming into a community, since the plot of land was going to be redeveloped. What would make this community healthier if money's being dumped into this plot? social health, facilitating through redevelopment of a community. But not only that, in their U.S. history class, they looked at First Amendment rights and what it means to advocate for change in the community, especially when there's an issue like this going on. Who gets to voice their concern? Who gets to advocate for what the community should look like when it's going through a change? In their biology class, they looked at this soil contamination through a bunch of science aspects that I'm sure my students know more about than me at this point. And then in English, we looked at many texts that we analyzed that look at what does it mean to have a healthy community. I mean, that area of the East Side is a food desert in many ways. Like when you're redeveloping an area like that, can you bring in resources, good groceries, healthy food to this community? So we looked at Clint Smith's Place Matters, which is a spoken word poem about those kinds of neighborhoods that need these resources. So all the while, the focal point, the common ground is this old manure plant that's being redeveloped, and we look at it through the lens of our specific subjects, but we also tie it all together by saying how can we take these skills that we're learning about in our different classes, this knowledge, and focus it into being community leaders and advocating for positive change at this development site.
Did you talk a little bit about the people that ended up living there?
Yeah, so we actually, when we brought in community members, so the end game for this was bringing in community members that had something to do with this redevelopment project. We actually have students who lived at the site. We have people that worked at the site, and they were actually brought in, and students were allowed to interview them about their experiences, how readily available information about the history of this place is, and the potential, I don't want to say dangerous, but like the history of the situation. Students could ask questions about it. So they were part of the panel, as well as we had people from the university come in that experts in, the biology aspect of this. We had city planners come in so students could advocate and ask questions about this topic.
And did the Moving Out program, were they involved in the panel?
You should get Dean on the team to write the next unit.
Pardon me? Moving Out, I don't think so. I don't recall, but I don't think we had it.
Did you talk about the income variances?
Absolutely. So in my English class, we read a text, actually, the first vignette from House on Mango Street that talks about what it means to have access to a safe living space, and we investigated how important that is for personal health, community health. So some of the questions that we generated from reading that text resulted in them asking some of these panel members, how much does it cost to live here? Are you doing anything for low-income families to help them gain access to these new apartments that are going up here?
Yeah, and the Moving Out program's involved bringing in tax credit program and also housing people that are physically disabled.
Nice.
So it's a really wonderful program, and it's really, and a really nice catch on, and I think making it clear so that a development plan can contribute to community wellness.
Absolutely.
In a very real way. And that's that plan out there, which I've been involved with for 10 years. Trying to get somebody to do something out there. I do that for a living and tried to do something there, but it was really finally encouraged. And this is a really nice example of how you can bring a whole kinds of things together about something that seems so unrelated.
Right.
So
absolutely.
So good job on that one, and the others too. When we talked about pathways, I knew that there were opportunities like this to take a field of whatever it is, communication and arts, or whatever the next one is going to be. You could take a project and find how it relates. So I'm really want to encourage you guys to continue those projects. I think that's where, as you were saying, how this little project begins to see how it all fits together. And so good work on that. Thanks.
All right, Nikki?
One, I just want to continue what Dean said. Having used Moving Out, it's an excellent program. It helps individuals with disabilities buy their first homes, and it also provides quite a bit of support and structure, and I think anything with that would be incredibly important. You guys have done a great job. Unfortunately, now I have to ask some of the hard questions. No offense. I hope none is taken by any of this. My first main question is, we have 12% special ed. Does that mean inclusion in the curriculum? Does that mean just they're in there? How does that exactly work? I think that's a Sydney question, but could be a Scott question. I'm not sure. Or Vincent.
I was just going to say that, it's full inclusion, and that one of the strengths is I, for the first time, work with just one special education teacher very closely, and we share information about our students with IEPs on a regular basis, and that's been a really wonderful experience for me, being able to have that one point person to collaborate with and share knowledge about our students.
Additionally, just a couple others. Now, you were talking, I believe, Sean, you were talking about the changing from block schedule to a B schedule, yes, and preparing for pathways. That how many electives will a person have to give up doing pathways, and will they still have access to the arts, still access to like sign language, foreign language?
Yes. So at La Follette High School, with 8 credit earning opportunities, math, science, social studies, English, and then there's the split of the health OC, right? And then they have still 3 more electives. They could take AVID, world language, band. At La Follette High School, now you can't take everything, right? But that was the case when I was there too. If you wanted to take German, Spanish, and French, you would find that, wow, I can't do that. I have to pick a language, unless I wanted to extend that over several years. But yes, students will have the opportunity to continue to take a rich and deep offering of electives.
Yeah, so Nikki, I'll just speak to that for the other 3 high schools that have a 7-period day, yep, that do not have a block schedule. 1 semester course is taken up with the Pathways health exploration, but then they still have approximately 2.5 other credit opportunities to take other courses. But again, it is a place where kids have to make decisions, but in our current scheduling model, they have to make decisions as well. They can't take everything, but they do still have room in their schedule.
And then one additional question. We hear a lot on class size, and we hear a lot about the learning communities. And I know La Follette is rather large, and I hear that, but my question is this. Is Pathways basically going to be smaller classes than our traditional class size currently?
Yeah, so I think there's a little bit of semantics in terms of small learning community versus small class sizes. I would say at some of our schools this year, depending on a subject area, there are classes that tend to be smaller. But in 9th grade, many of our principals make intentional decisions about class size for core areas at 9th grade across the board, whether within the health services pathway or not. And I think they're continuing to do that based on what they know about those courses and what they know about 9th graders. The goal of Pathways is small learning community, meaning a tight-knit community of adults and students that know each other well. The goal is not smaller class size.
Additionally, in the special subjects which are still in Pathways, how many students is average? Do you have any that have 40 students?
So the only additional course that is for Pathways is the health science exploration course, and no, that is the average class size of any other class size. I would assume at La Follette it's probably 25 to 28.
28.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's about it.
Okay, Anna?
Just quickly, so how much time do you all have for professional collaboration time when you're in a pathway?
So at La Follette, we meet twice weekly during prep time, and so 2 hours a week, 2 different 1-hour sessions. Yeah.
And is that any different from a non-pathway collaboration time?
So at La Follette, but I can speak to it across the system. So within our pathways, for teachers that are teaching, they do have that 2-hour block. So 2 periods at the traditional high schools, it's about a 52, 53 minute times 2. That is not currently what every other subject area and every other group of teachers that either share a course, a content, or students because of our master scheduling. So it varies from school to school in terms of teachers that have that common planning time during the week. Again, many of our principals have been really intentional about switching scheduling to try and find as much common planning time. We do have the PCT, which is that professional collaboration time, on Mondays as well. But across all 4 of the comprehensives for pathways, they have once a week where they talk about students that they share, and once a week where they talk more about this time for this integrated project. And we knew with the integrated project being new, and you hear just from Victor, like the amount of like intentionality that goes into it, we knew that they needed the time for that.
And then my other question was just off the other thing that you said, that this was like the first opportunity that you had to work, have all your students with IEPs with one cross-categorical teacher. So how did that work out like that? Is that intentional that one CC teacher was assigned?
Yes. Yep. And we specifically scheduled our Pathways courses in a way so that all of them would have common planning, common prep time. And that's, as we hope to expand Pathways, that is a model that we find really important to replicate.
What's the caseload at La Follette for that CC teacher?
All of the students in the pathway. I think that's all of the students with disabilities in the pathway.
12%, 10.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, look, thanks to everyone, all the questions, all the panelists. I want to give Superintendent and Cindy and the panelists any final comments here. For the sake of time, I think we will need to move on.
I agree. We could be here all night. Clearly, there's a lot of interest in this topic. I can tell from the questions from our board, which we appreciate. Your interest is a good sign for all of us. I want to thank our amazing panel. I don't know if there are parents. Are your parents in the audience? Thank your parents, wherever they are in the audience or not. You are brilliant young people, and we're looking forward to seeing what you do with the rest of your high school careers. There are a lot of people associated with Pathways in the audience, so I would love to give them a quick round of applause. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. Much appreciation for all of you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, the consent items. So I'm going to move that the Board of Education adopt and approve all the motions set forth.
I just need to announce that I'm pulling 6.6 from the, I just need to announce that I'm pulling 6.6 from the consent list.
We'll get to that.
Before you vote.
Okay, appreciate it.
I'm supposed to do it up front.
No. Okay. And let me begin again. I'll move that the Board of Education adopt and approve all the motions set forth in Section 6 of the electronic agenda prepared for the December 18, 2017 regular school board meeting, exactly as said motions are written. Now, by voting affirmatively on this motion, a board member expresses his or her affirmative vote on each of the motions consolidated hereby, subject to any express separation that has been made by any member of the school board.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And there's an email today, and we know that 6.6 is pulled, so let's please not waste, well, without a waste of time, but let's not spend time there. We'll come back to that at a later date for discussion. So anyone has any items that they like to separate?
I'd like to separate 6.8, the CUNA grant.
Any others? Okay, then all in favor of the All in favor of the consent items that other than those that have been separated? Laura, your advisory vote, please.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Okay, 6.8.
Yeah, I've got some questions, and I don't know who the appropriate person to ask is. Kind of two sets of questions. One is that the grant, the language in the resolution used the word increase. The language in the memo uses the word as well as grow, the phrase as well as grow. Does this grant require us to expand the number of community schools, and if so, is there a timeline, a number, or anything like that? Or
I think
is
that's
this,
a good question, TJ.
What, excuse me?
The grant cannot bind the board to expand community schools, although, I mean, that money is earmarked for that purpose. The intent is that it would allow us to expand to 2 more pilot sites in the coming school year. We've been moving forward with that intent, as I think you all know, based on the community schools presentation back in September.
Let me just be clear that does the grant specify that it be used for expansion?
I'm pretty sure that it does. Kelly, do you know? We'd have to look into it, TJ.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions about 6.9?
6.8.
6.8? I think those are good questions, and I think that those will be questions that we'll come back to as we talk more about community schools in the future and the future of community schools in the district. So it's something that I'm sure that the board will be interested in having a discussion about. So no further questions about 6.8, then I'll move that the Board of Education accept the amount of $417,870 from CUNA Mutual Group Foundation representing years 2 and 3 of its grant to support the community school initiative.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Laura, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
Opposed.
Motion carries 6-1. Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda. Instruction Work Group. Mr. Merks.
Okay, we met on December 4th, 2017. We had what I believe was a very, very productive discussion of strategic goals that will be continued at our January meeting, which is scheduled for January 8th. I think that it was good to hear from other board members and from our staff and administrators, and I think that we're moving closer, and I look forward to that continued discussion. Additionally, we had on the agenda an update on the middle school / adolescent learner project, and look forward to hearing more about that in the future. As I noted before, the next meeting date is January 8th. And in addition to strategic framework goals and metrics, the calendar includes special education and student services, staffing, and instructional design. So that'll be interesting also.
All right. Thank you, TJ. Next item on the agenda, Operations Work Group.
Okay, well, we had a busy meeting, and we have a couple of items for action at today's meeting. So it started with a discussion around the long-range facilities plan, and that was the first meeting, I think, that we will have of many, and some ideas were run by the board with regards to some significant moves or thinking around our facilities and planning long-range for the district. The next item was a preliminary discussion around compensation and staffing as an introduction to the 2018-19 budget, and the board provided the administration with some initial feedback on how we would set priorities around some of the key compensation and staffing issues that we will be facing in the 2018-19 budget. The next item is the proposed class size policy, and this is something that we discussed bringing to the board for a vote at this meeting. I'd like to remind the board members and also to inform the public that the initial discussion around the class size policy is that at this time, the goal was to mainly codify what we have actually been doing in practice, and feeling that a much bigger review of class size policy wasn't appropriate at this time as we head into our 5-year strategic plan and look at various ways that levers that might be we might want to use with regards to addressing student achievement and raising those. So the board has received quite a number of emails from the public and parents with regards to class size. And that's why I add this context around it, because it really was not meant to signify any changes or intention long-term with regards to class sizes in the district. So with that, the board has received from the administration a summary of the changes since last Monday's meeting, which is when we discussed this, and which the administration took into account feedback, mainly, I would say, from TJ with regards to amendments he was considering making at this meeting, and we actually like to get those on the table in advance so that the work can be done. And you can see from this work about the implications, financial implications and other implications to amendments, rather than trying to do those on the fly at a board meeting. And so, Jen, do you want to step in at this point and talk about those?
Sure. I'll probably have Dylan take the lead on this, but mainly to say that we took the feedback from that last meeting. You'll see in the grid that Dylan always makes for the purposes of these decisions, which of those recommendations we took and incorporated into the policy. For example, the 135 number for student load was incorporated, as well as some other key changes, better defining AGR and Title I. And then there were some that we analyzed and did not recommend, which are all captured in the grid. Is there anything in particular that you want to
Yeah, so
highlight?
I think it's very clear. The grid,
Right.
to me, laid it out
It
exactly. I
that's-
don't think we actually need to go through that. I would just say, ask whether board members have any questions specifically on the grid and the changes made.
Sounds good.
Okay, no questions then. Okay, with that, I will move that the Board of Education approve the proposed revisions to Policy 3450, class size, as set forth in the materials prepared for the December 18th, 2017 regular meeting, effective immediately.
Second.
Okay.
Me? Nikki?
Okay, any further discussion? Nikki?
I respect the work that the board has done. I expect and understand the small changes, but 40 students is still way too high. I understand we're going to go in more depth, but right now we're busting the seams in certain schools. We're having overflow issues. We're having teachers who are overwhelmed. Therefore, I cannot support it at this time.
Jen?
Mary, would it be all right if we talked a little bit about that? Because I think the 40 number, when you see it just on the page, it does maybe look alarming. And I think examples of the courses, and many of them don't even meet the 40 level. They may be at 32 or 33, are courses like choir, courses like, give me another example, Dylan. Band, right? Like you actually need everyone in band at once, so they may exceed that number. Gym, that's right, Laura. So I just want to remind everyone of what we mean by those specials courses. And again, I mean, 40 is the maximum. If you were to dig into the actual sections, it's I think rare that it's actually getting to that maximum. So just want to understand what we're codifying.
Teacher?
I'd like to offer an amendment on the subject that I think has almost no cost associated with it. The only cost would be in reporting. And that would be to add a column to the, there with the specials that designates 30 as the optimum. And then that would be part of the required reporting, that how many sections were of the specials were over 30. And so there's no actual, the only thing is staff time in preparing reports. So I don't think there's any real cost associated with this. But I think it would also create transparency and give us a better sense of what's happening with this 40 and give people a comfort level. So the language that Dylan, I have language that Dylan prepared on this if I formally move it now. I move to amend the current motion to include a direction to administration to further modify policy 3450 as presented in the documents for tonight's meeting by adding an optimum class size of 30 for special subject classes for grades 6 through 12.
Second.
Okay, so this is with regards to the amendment. Is there any further discussion?
Mary, would it be all right if I asked Lisa to join us? I just want to make sure that we're not voting on anything, that there are implications. Since this is the first time we're having this discussion.
I don't believe there's cost implications.
I don't think so. I just want to, can we verify that before a vote?
And while we wait for Lisa,
Lisa,
Dean,
could you
what is
join
your
point?
No one wants a regular class, but what you know, does this, what you just suggested, does that carve out the 40 that'll be in a choir class or the band class?
All it would do is it would say that the optimum is 30, and then the reporting requirements have been revised to include reporting on how many exceed the optimums. Yeah. So it would give us a reporting. It's kind of a it's chaining together different pieces.
Yeah. And of course we got to have choir at 40.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or more.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Right.
Just one, I'd like to go and address the issue with regards to at least any implications with regard to this amendment.
I don't think there are any cost implications to the amendment. You know, some of the courses that we're talking about with big numbers, you know, I'm gym class, choir, concert band, swing choir, you know, those kinds of courses.
Where 30 would actually not be optimum.
Right, drama, right.
Yeah, so couldn't we also do this just as a reporting without the optimum? Because, I mean, for these, I mean, I think...
I would be fine with that. This occurred to me as a way to make that happen. I don't think...
Excuse me.
The optimum has no... Sorry.
Yeah.
In the current language, you would get a report on the ones that exceed the 40. Right, so by adding the optimum, you're getting the reporting on that 30 to 40 range, but the current language, when we're reporting on optimums under minimums or exceed maximums, you'd get a report on the plus 40s.
Yeah, understood. We could just as easily say we want to report on any room over 30 in the district.
Which would be better than calling it an optimum.
Which actually I would be more interested in than band class, right?
Yeah, I would concur with Kate, because by saying it's optimum, that's not necessarily true for band.
I would actually be far more interested in the 33 that's in English.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Nikki?
Sorry, I cannot support the, I need the word optimum. Maybe it's because I'm a lawyer, maybe it's because it's semantics, but I believe it'll add to transparency, and therefore I would prefer the word optimum remain in there.
Nikki, why do you think it leads, if the reporting would be at 30, why does it lead to any change in transparency?
It leads to the fact of, it gives a guideline. Also, it shows which ones are and aren't. And it says, okay, we understand it, but we need to know each class, and it's just the optimal level. It doesn't mean we're bound by it. Doesn't mean we could set it. But it does mean this is what we would prefer as a district that is optimum for the class.
See, that's my concern, is because 30 isn't optimum for band. And you're saying, by saying optimum, you are in fact saying it's optimum. And for choir, 30's not going to be the best choir.
I think optimum is up to the principal, and believe that optimum is in there solely to protect the, one, I've heard from teachers who said they want the language in there on optimum because it helps clarify the situation. Two, we understand that band and choir are going to be larger. That I understand and perfectly fine. It's not, this amendment doesn't cost anything. And it just states this is what the program is. This is what our optimum numbers are. In this class, the optimum doesn't apply.
Okay, well, I think we should have the vote proceed with the vote on the amendment that would include the word, not only the reporting, but the word optimum that would apply to those classes. So, Lori?
This is only for
just the amendment.
Only for specials.
Grades 6 through 12.
I'll vote nay.
Thank you, Laura. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So 3 in favor. All those opposed? Nay.
Sorry, could I see hands, please? Thank you.
Okay, so that amendment failed. Then we will.
I mean, I'm more than happy to add that language on the reporting. Just
why don't
if we want to take one more go at this? I'm not.
Yeah, go ahead.
Intending to not amend things on the floor tonight. That was the original goal here. So let me offer an amendment in the reporting section 3, right? At the beginning of each semester, the administration shall provide a report to the board on the number of classroom sections that meet optimums, fall below the established class size minimum, exceed the established class size maximums, or exceed 30 students. Is that?
No.
In the specials.
I think this
or specials.
Secondary specials
Dylan,
classes
you know what we're trying to do. You tell us.
that exceed 30. Yeah, exceed 30.
Second.
Or fall between 30 and 40, whatever.
Second.
Okay, and this is the language is exceed 30. Dylan, do you want to read that back?
Yeah. Establish class size maximums or classroom sections that it hangs weird at the end, so I'm just trying to, it would actually become an and/or. Secondary specials classes that exceed 30 students.
Okay.
And is the word optimal in there?
No.
No.
That failed.
That failed. Is there a second?
Second.
Anna seconded. Laura, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes 7-0. Okay, and now we're back to the original motion.
I'd like to offer another amendment. When it has been vetted, and the amendment reads, I move to amend the current motion to include a direction to administration to further modify policy 3450 as presented in the documents for tonight's meeting to include differentiated class size maximums for 4th and 5th grades similar to those of K through 3rd, specifically the AGR class size maximum to 4th and 5th grade to be set at 26, and I believe this was costed out at approximately $4,500.
Second it.
I have to find the exact cost out, but it's in the materials we received tonight.
It's 425.
425,000.
425,000.
Second it.
Okay, discussion. Yeah.
Mary, I would love for us to have just a chance to reiterate some of the concerns that we have about this particular amendment. I mean, obviously, there is the cost, and we are entering into budget season, working hard to make compensation our lead foot in this very important budget, and just concerned about spending about $500,000 on a change that we're not sure is substantial enough to have the desired impact. But I would love for Lisa to add a little bit.
Yeah, the one add that I would make is we don't know the impact that this would have on unallocated. We've been creating unallocated pools based on current class sizes, and every time you lower that upper limit, it could have an increased pull on the unallocated pool. So just want to be sure we're not getting ahead of ourselves when we could have a bigger pull on unallocated at those levels.
Yeah, I'll chime in here. I've been doing quite a number of visits to schools and hearing quite a bit from both our teachers and our principals on the different needs that they have in their schools and their ability to meet the needs of teachers and students in the classrooms by being able to, in some ways, take 1/10 of this position and then add it to this position to make a full-time position. And I really think that, and what they say though, is that there's still much greater needs, and being able to have a full-time psychologist. And I really am concerned that we are trying to codify and to put so much on class sizes that we're going to put so many resources into it that we're not going to be able to provide a lot of this other support that the teachers, when I sit and talk to them, tell me that's really important for them to be able to do their jobs in the classroom. How important that reading specialist is, how much that behavior specialist is. And so I will be voting against it. I just don't think that we should be putting in place policy without understanding how it's going to impact our budgets and our allocations. Nikki.
I will be respectfully voting for this amendment. Nothing is more important to me than our students, and I feel our class size deserves that attention. We have heard behavior issues are at an all-time high. We're hearing 90 behavior reports in one day at some schools. I believe that poverty plays a role and class size plays a role in both of that. I have also talked to teachers and I respect what Mary said. However, I would have to vote for this amendment because how we're defining poverty under the AGR and under the statute, I believe does not go far enough.
James?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to have to bring us back to process. It's one of the things that, as a board, I want to remind everyone of, is that once we get to the full board meeting and we start amending and doing a lot of amendments on the floor, you know, the impact of those amendments, whether or not all board members understand all these amendments, all of that comes into question. And that's why we try to do the work prior to getting here to the board meeting. And so I just want to remind everyone of the process here. And if we're going to start amending all of this on the floor, to me it starts saying, you know, do we even want to vote on this tonight? Do we want to consider even pushing it? So for me, that's the problem. You know, we try to get away from doing a lot of amendments at the full board meeting, and here we are with all these amendments on the floor. And so I just want to bring us back to process and give some thought to that. So is this something that you know, if we're going to make all these amendments where all of us may not understand what we're amending and voting on, is this something we want to do here, or is this something we want to push to our January meeting?
Nikki, I'd like to get other people before going back to you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this? Anna?
Yeah, I have similar concerns to James as well. When we start making big decisions, $500,000 and that type of stuff right here on the floor without any discussion amongst board members, with the community, to me that feels a little not transparent for everyone involved. So if it requires building in some public input, bringing it back, I would be on board with that. Like I said, I just get concerned once we're talking about pretty significant changes that really haven't been vetted.
Laura?
So earlier this week and last week, I think it was Kelly that told me that there was a reason why it was important that we do this now, because something called workbooks, which I'm still not entirely sure what those exactly are. But
you don't want to know.
We're like coming out soon, and so I'm wondering what the ramifications to those would be if we chose to delay this until the January meeting, because it does sound like the public speakers have some valid points, and that, you know, if there is some issues with process, but at the same time, if there's time concerns with this needing to be done quickly, I would just be wondering what effect that would have.
Thank you for the question, Laura. Can I go ahead and answer it, Mary? Yes, the workbooks, which is the tool that principals use to plan their budgets, come out right after the new year. And that is why we wanted this placed, if it was going to be placed at all, on the December agenda. At the meeting that we had where class size was discussed in more depth, instruction work group, November instruction work group, we had a discussion about timing, about the kinds of changes we could make and the pros and cons within that timeline. What we left that meeting with was what Mary described, an effort to codify the policy as is, or as it's been, to align with our practice. Thank you, Dylan. I think my worry about making significant changes at this point is just locking us into budget commitments before the budget has officially launched in January, to your earlier points. I think my concern about delaying it, which is I think why you're asking the question, Laura, is that I think it's very difficult to make significant changes at this point in January. Lisa, do you want to add any more about process and the impact of delaying the vote? Would not be a problem if it were just about codifying practice. Delaying the vote is a problem if we're going to make a big change. If you're going to make a big change, a $500,000 investment, you need to do it now so that we can build it into the workbook. If you don't plan on making a big change, I think it's okay to delay it until January. Otherwise, you'd have to delay it a long time for the following year. I hope that's making sense.
Okay. Anna?
Yeah, well, I mean, I understand the significance with the money and how that would impact it, but I mean, I would say that we started off the school year and we had $1 million difference in vote based on changes that the board decided on around special education
revenue that we had too.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean,
it was based on
there was some flexibility.
Revenue.
Yeah, we had new revenue
that was planned. Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, so,
Hold on.
okay, and this is actually going to be the end. Nikki, everyone, one more time, that's it. Now we're going. Okay, Nikki?
My question, I believe in amending the record. The email we received from TJ was 48 hours ago. It already had a financial implication, and therefore I believe the record needs to be corrected. It's hard to say it's on the fly when you have 48 hours notice.
Kate?
Two or three things to start with. Number one is that I understand the desire not to have surprises at general board meetings. There's a few different things that kind of apply to this. First off, when we discussed this previously, all these issues have been brought up, and yet at no time was this proposal of moving HER contracts included in there, and that's a news thing, and it's something that I'm not clear is statutory legal to this point. But when the discussion came, and the general discussion was to find, I believe that one of the takeaways probably from our last discussion just at the operations work group was to find a way to make the assignment of poverty more dynamic. This was the way that it was done. That was never offered there. So the first I heard of that was on Wednesday. It takes time to think through things. It takes time to analyze things. And that's one issue why things go forward. Secondly, there's this discussion of whether $425,000 is a large amount or a small amount. It is approximately the amount that we allocated in the middle of a semester to Leopold to meet crises. And if we're talking about the total annual cost of a district-wide or elementary school-wide policy, I think that it is really not a large amount. In fact, I think that most, and I think it also shows us that most of our classes in our higher poverty schools at grades 4 and 5 are in fact actually below 26 now, and that there's a minimal number that would need to be added. And in terms of the size of the investment, I don't think this is a large amount. In terms of the delaying and processes more generally, I'd be happy with a delay to vet things further, but the fact is that we give feedback, we talk about things, the staff administration creates analyses and recommendations, but the only time we can actually offer amendments and find a sense of the board, whether there are 4 votes in favor of that amendment, is at the meetings where we vote. And inevitably, if the recommendations will not meet the desires of all 7 board members, and if one or more of the board members feels that a change is so important that they will not support it without it, then they will offer an amendment, and that will happen. And that is how it works. And you might be uncomfortable with it or uncomfortable with it, but there is no other way to do it.
Yeah, actually, TJ, I think actually you did follow the process that we laid out last week, where we said, let's get, and you got that idea. We now, and this is the way it should work, right now we have the cost associated with that amendment. I think, and that's why I'm moving, that we should move to a vote after Kate speaks, or any who hasn't spoken, Dean, because we have the information. And I think that was the benefit of you putting that on the table and working with the administration. I'm totally with you, TJ. I think it's, I just think we should move to a vote. I mean, because once we've had it's just going around and round. Kate?
Great. I am in complete alignment. I would like to move to a vote. And I also just want to kind of bring us back to some of the big things that we have been talking about over the last month, the big moving pieces going into budget season, going into the strategic framework. We are lucky to have some of the smallest class sizes in the country as an urban or semi-urban district, right? We're half what many urban districts are in terms of class size. And we have worse results for particularly Black and brown children in this district. And as long as we continue to talk about class size and spend the majority of our time talking about class size, we are sending a message to our community that we think decreasing our already small class sizes will fix our bad results. And I would really like to move on to talking about some of the other things that I know many of us believe passionately will and can change the experience in our district for some of our students. Things like mental health, things like curriculum, things like facilities, things like teachers and supporting our teachers with more time, with more collaboration. So I would like to move on. I would like to vote. I think this is a good codification of where we're at. And yeah.
Okay. Dean, you're last, and then we're going to the vote.
Yep. Where I landed on last Wednesday was and what I heard was that there was a pretty general understanding that the definition of poverty that were used were kind of, I wouldn't say conflicting, but needed to change. And I was more interested in seeing us move towards that and then that would help inform us on this a whole lot better. And I think we all said that using the one and minus the other one, and they give us different numbers. So that's what I was interested to see, and I don't know if we can do that today. You offered something on that, and I would like to. That's what I was kind of looking for. This one is a little. I'm kind of open to it, but at the same time, I'm not certain we should do it.
Before the meeting, I spoke with Dylan on language that would the footnote under B, adding based on adding the use of the two of an optional use of one of the two poverty measures for consideration of moving AGR contracts. This has not been costed out, and I don't think it would have huge implications, but you don't know. And if the amendment that's currently on the table passes, I will offer that amendment. Also, if it doesn't pass, I will simply vote against this and hope that we stick with our current policy. That's where I'm at on this. And it would simply be adding, I can tell you what the language is, it would be based on the ordering of elementary schools by student poverty levels used for the purposes of defining Title I or traditional free reduced lunch counts. Just adding the words or and traditional free reduced lunch counts to that would create opportunities to use either poverty measure. But that's an amendment I'm not going to offer unless the amendment on the floor passes. So, I mean, that's where I'm at. To be, no sense in tying people up with that, and it hasn't been vetted, and it's a tough one.
TJ, my understanding is there's actually not an amendment on the floor. We passed the amendment.
No,
we didn't.
The fourth, fifth grade AGR amendment.
Oh, that one. Okay.
There's an amendment on the
Thank you. Okay, that's why we're going to vote. Okay, thank you. Laura, your advice, so our people, clarification, the amendment on the floor is to make a change in the 4 or 5 class sizes with the effect being approximately $425,000.
Yes.
I think Anna,
Jen, are you pointing?
Anna wants
I just want
has a question.
clarification. Nikki said we got an email 2 days ago from
No,
you.
the email was
We did
sent
not.
today.
We got an email sent today at 12 o'clock.
Oh, I got one. Maybe
So
it was
I
a
just
draft
wanted to
that
clarify
I
for the
got.
record That it was 4 hours ago.
Then I apologize, and I was incorrect, and then I screwed up which amendment, and that, I will stand
and
corrected.
board members' time frames are different. We don't all get everything and study it at the same time. So I don't think it came 2 days ago. I may not be able to get to it until today. So, so that's sort of the point.
If I misspoke, I will amend the record.
Okay, so Laura, your advisory vote.
Nay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Show of hands for Barb. 1, 2, 4, 5. That does not pass. 2-5-0. Okay, so then back to the original motion. And Laura, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that passes 5-2. Thank you. You then have Board Policy 8005, which is on employment, and we discussed this just last Monday, and so I am going to move that the Board of Education approve the proposed revisions to Policy 8005, employment, as set forth in the materials prepared for the December 18th, 2017 regular board meeting, effective immediately. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Kate had the second. Any discussion?
Here, this is an, I'm sorry.
Okay, I guess, yes.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to recognize me. Yeah, this is one of those where, again, I have a process issue. I don't think this was really vetted enough for me and through the public sphere. I think we could have done some more work on this one. We've talked a lot about hiring approaches and local versus long distance hiring, and I just think there's more discussion we could have had on this particular one that we didn't have. So that and the process piece bothers me, so I won't be supporting the employment. I will not be supporting this one.
Okay. James, it didn't seem last week when we brought this up that you had brought up that point.
This is a point we've been talking about for quite a while.
Okay.
It's not a new point.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Delay in this would cause what type of problems?
I don't know if it needs to be delayed. I'm just saying I'm not going to support it.
Well, is there something you could find here that you could add? Because
we currently have a waiver on this policy, and that waiver expires, I don't know when.
For the next hiring season, because the goal was to
So
have
it expires in February, doesn't it? Does it expire in February, is that correct? Or does it expire at the end of the school
I
year?
haven't looked up that motion.
But that's
TJ.
the impact of it, is that it's currently, we're waived, we have no policy. So.
Okay. Laura, your advisory vote. Oh, Anna?
So, yeah, I could see us going back and adding a little bit more language. I know some language was added around my concerns around the advisory community panels that are participating in the principal identification. Although I do share James's concern that I would like to see something explicitly stated in regard to, you know, putting a priority on and using local candidates. I don't know if that's possible or how that would work, but I think it came up again this evening.
John?
If the board wants us to explore what it would look like to change the policy language to explicitly preference local candidates, I would not want to make that decision on the stage. I want to consult with Deirdre and the HR team and understand the implications. But I mean, I don't think it'd be terrible to delay until January. I just want to offer that. Certainly is an opportunity if the board would like to give it a little more airtime before voting. It's an important policy. It's been waived for 3 years now while we learn about our hiring practices and improve them. This is a codification of all the improvements that we've made over several years' time. I think if the board would like to visit it for another month in order to make it right, I certainly would encourage you to do that. I don't see it as being a rush. We've had, yeah, it's important to me that it's fully vetted. If there are concerns about it not being vetted, I think we should do it.
James, are there areas that you would add to or edit? What are the pieces that you'd like to see?
Well, as I said, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't speak specifically to it, but generally speaking, for my constituents, the issues I've heard is around how, for example, local candidates don't seem to get fair treatment in our hiring process, for example. So that's a big one for me, especially local candidates of color. So that's huge for me. And so if we're talking about a hiring policy, and if that's a concern in the community, at least part of the community that I represent, then I'd like to see something in there in regards to that.
Mary, would it be all right if Deirdre joined us?
Sure.
Deirdre, could you come up here? I just want to make sure
so
I'm not missing
my
anything.
perspective. The rest of the board might want to move ahead, which is fine.
Actually, I'd like to waive.
It's a discussion I want to have.
And to be clear, the waiver that was voted on was a waiver to waive policy 8005 for the, as applied to the application screening, interviewing, and the hiring processes for principals, assistant principals, and teachers for the 16-17 and 17-18 school years. So as we start preparing to hire for the 18-19 school year, there is not a waiver in place for that.
And we're about to start.
And we're about to start.
Yeah, I mean, we're underway as it stands. So I would appreciate, if it is going to be delayed, that we have a process that moves pretty quickly, as we're currently underway in terms of the screening for this next cycle.
Nikki?
I would have to agree with Anna. I would like, and James, I'd like more on local. I would also like to include that. Also, I am curious on, I don't think there was enough discussion on hiring of people of color and individuals getting interviews. I happen to agree with that. So I'd be fine putting it off at this particular time and hearing it first thing in January.
TJ?
I'd just like to ask Dylan and Deirdre if you are aware of any restrictions on the use of local preferences in hiring as a weighting criteria.
Right.
No. So, I mean, is the question you're asking, are we not?
If we were to designate by policy a preference for local candidates, would that run afoul of employment law? And one of the things is, I have no idea. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, and so that's why I just leaned over to Dylan, because I said I think we're getting into dangerous territory here when we're creating that kind of preference.
Yeah, and I just want to, I have not researched it, and when we did the budget repair bill, it got rid of residency requirements, and so I haven't also then looked at the law, like, would a preference be conceived as a back way to have a residency requirement, and so I just haven't done the legal research on that question, and it may not. That's just something that popped in my head, though.
I also have concerns that the preferences might have implications for racial discrimination, because the pool, the defined local pool would probably be overwhelmingly white. And though I understand that's not the purpose here, to put it in policy would create that. So I have some concerns about that also. That I don't know. I honestly don't know.
You know, when we start talking about employment, we always we immediately go to preference, and we immediately go to quotas and things of that nature. We have jobs where we just simply hire local folks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that we just advertise locally, because it's not a job that, for example, we need to do a national search on. Isn't that correct? So, and I don't think anyone ever considers those to be, all I'm saying is that, you know, we need to give some thought to, you know, our local hiring. Now, how we do that, I'm not sure. I'm not the expert in that.
Yeah,
so that's my point here, is that I don't think we've had, you know, I've heard a lot of criticism from the public, but I don't think we've had a discussion about, you know, how we could remedy that. So I'm not saying you put it in policy. I'm not saying how you do it. I'm saying that I would defer to you experts in terms of how we, but we need to have some discussion on it. And to this point, I don't think we've had any discussion on it, but that's something I hear from the public.
Yeah, and I would agree we haven't had this discussion as a group, and I'm glad that it's at least coming up now. It's an important discussion. I would want to take, this is not the kind of thing that I would certainly want to amend again on the spot, because I too have concerns about policy, right, as opposed to practice, and just having policy that binds us. I mean, every hiring decision is, many of them are unique, right? And if we were bound to always preferencing the local candidate, well, I can think of quite a few people in the audience who wouldn't be here today. So I just think that there's a lot to, there's a lot to think about, and I know what you're talking about, James. We've talked about these.
I didn't say always preferencing local candidates. I didn't say that.
This is why we need time to think about it and think about the implications.
And sometimes.
I mean, I do, yeah, and
right.
I do think it's worth having the conversation. I just do have concerns that it's codified in policy.
That's right. That's right. We could not, it would not be wise to delay it beyond January, because that is when hiring season gets going. We can't. So you have the choice to either vote today as is, and we would address this issue through practice, or delay until January. What was a very light January meeting is suddenly becoming more robust. But we certainly can wait until January and think about this additional language.
Yes, I mean, we are in screening as we speak. So it really is important for us to get this closed out.
Okay, you tell us what direction you want to go in, right? On the board.
Can I just ask?
Yeah, please do.
Is a no vote equal to delay then, or is a no vote equal to we don't like this policy at all and we're saying?
So, right, a no vote could impact the number of yes votes we would need at a later date versus just withdrawing and tabling.
Okay.
Might just be the cleaner way to go.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay.
We'll take that as direction to table to the January meeting.
Okay, and we'll take this particular issue on. If there is anything in addition, we would love to know before we bring it back. But we'll work on this particular issue. Thank you, Deirdre.
Are individuals with disabilities also included in that? On the local hiring, it's just local, correct? It's not like on race. It's just
Well, I mean, we wouldn't ever recommend
it's not a quota.
illegal preferences.
Yeah, that's what I just want to make sure it's not a quota.
Yeah, you got it.
That's all I needed to know.
Okay, and our next meeting is January 22nd, the Operations Work Group, and on that agenda is the 2018-19 budget overview, really looking at the assumptions underlying the budget moving forward, then budget staffing analysis, which are the workbooks, the special education allocation impact, and the third item is the Employee Handbook Committee update. And we might be revisiting, once again, Policy 8005.
Stay tuned.
Okay, we'll continue to move on. So, other reports to the board, City of Madison Education Committee.
Unfortunately, the City of Education Committee representative, i.e. me, was stuck in a court hearing and the judge wouldn't let me leave.
But I did attend the meeting, and there was some really interesting discussion. We did get a letter from Mayor Soglin and Superintendent Cheatham regarding the role of the City Education Committee, and there was some discussion around what that role should be. And so it was a good discussion. I won't go into much details about it, but there was some agreement and disagreement about the recommendations from the city and school district, and so I'll leave it at that. If there's any details a person want to know, they can ask me at a later date. Talked a lot, got updated on the Madison out of school time, the most programs, so we had an update there. And those are the two main topics that we discussed at the City of Madison Education Committee. Most is moving along quite well. We have a new leader of most, and I forget his name offhand.
This conversation last time.
Yeah,
But the meeting was a lot better than last time, though. A lot more positive. Okay, so if there's no questions about City of Madison Education Committee, next item on the agenda would be Student Senate.
Okay. So in Student Senate, we voted officially on doing the Advanced Learning Plan as our main initiative that we're going to dive deep on this semester and maybe this whole year, talking about whether we want to help actually write the language of what will be fleshed out and given to you guys in an upcoming meeting, because that was part of the thing that was requested when we did the one-year framework instead of the 3 years. So we're trying to help develop the meat of what the longer-term plan would look like. And then we also talked about the election and how we would like that process to be started earlier than it was last year. So that will continue this Wednesday.
Thank you. Okay, where are we? Education Resource Officers.
Yeah. This committee had a fairly extensive meeting where all the subcommittees reported back to the committee of the whole around the issues that they were investigating. It moved the entire group much further along than we have been by consolidating and getting to the whole group information that all people were hearing. And what we found out is that we still have a little bit more work to do. So a January meeting will involve the entire group synthesizing some of the information we got in December. And also some groups are finishing doing more work, and then we're going to be adding to it. So it will be a regular 2-hour meeting where we'll be able to let the community people that were at that meeting respond to what they heard, and so we'll hear their input also. The meeting will be July 19th, I believe. Or no, January. Moved ahead there.
January
17th.
Close.
And it's January, for sure.
All right, thank you, Dean. Next item, other business, pupil non-discrimination report. I'll move that the Board of Education approve the pupil non-discrimination self-evaluation report as prepared for the December 18, 2017 regular meeting for submission to the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction prior to December 31st, 2017.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Question or comments? I have one. This is another one that I'm going to not support for the reason of, for years now, even prior to I came on the board, we've been talking about making sure that we have balanced input from the public. And if I'm not getting this mixed up with all the other things on the agenda, if I recall correctly, the input from the public here was not balanced. It was 85% of the survey was white respondents. And I'm not sure how many more months, days, years we want to continue to ask for input from a balanced public. So I don't know what else to do other than say, you know, if I can't get balanced input, I can't support it. So that's where I am. So for the non-discrimination report, since all the input we're getting is from predominantly white populations, it's not something I can support. So, any other comments?
Just a question.
Mr. Merckx.
Were you referring specifically to the athletics survey?
That's part of it.
And I was hesitant on this myself, and you know, we do have some hard trend data, and I think the trend data is in some ways the heart of this, and I will be supporting it, but with some hesitation around that this kind of came out of the blue, and that there's perhaps less integration of an analysis of the data with the recommendations and the prose parts of the report than I think would be ideal. I also have a sense that this is something that gets filed with DPI and not a lot more.
It's checked off.
Did you want to comment?
Yeah, I was going to say, both sets of feedback are really fair, and I think one of the learnings for my department, and really as I think about Eric Keston and his role within the district, is he took ownership of this because it was a bit untethered, and those are the discussions we've had, is how can we move beyond a check-the-box compliance, send it to DPI, but now really take a look at the data that we're getting. And he's already working to really improve our scholarship tracking systems. I do not want to use the word tracking in that sentence, but the way we maintain data around scholarships, because that popped up as a place of improvement 5 years ago, and we did not act on that, and so that is very fair feedback, and our goal within the department is to really manage this not as a 6-month workflow every 4.5 years when it's due, but how do we actually have the data accessible so that we're looking at it over the 5 years so it goes beyond the road compliance.
I think the word you're looking for is collection.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments? It's been moved and seconded. Laura, your advisory vote, please.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 5-2. Okay, next item on the agenda, land purchase. I'll move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of Lot 313, Arcadia Ridge Dome property from East Point LLC Viridian Homes as described in the documents prepared for the December 18, 2017 regular meeting for a purchase price of $2,050,000 and to close no earlier than December, is that date correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Close no earlier than December 31st, 2018?
Yeah, the end of next year.
Okay.
That's a latest close date.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments?
James, is it all right if Mike
Yes, indeed.
joins us? And maybe Andrew?
Okay,
Yeah, come on.
let them come up.
You guys, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mertz.
Yeah, I will not be supporting this. And we have a series of projections which shows growth in the memorial area. And I think we can safely anticipate, as we discussed last Monday, that we will be constructing schools in that area in the next 10 or 20 years. However, the exact location of those schools has never been discussed before the board, by the board before, despite the fact that we had a meeting on Monday when it would have been a perfect topic for discussion and this item was pending. Additionally, the City of Madison is currently redoing their neighborhood plan in adjacent areas, their neighborhood plans, and where projected growth is located, and therefore where schools need to be located, and what that looks like in terms of single-family, multifamily, commercial, mixed-use, industrial, all will influence where we will need schools. This is located, by my estimate, something like 0.5 to 0.6 miles from one of our current schools, Olson. We haven't discussed the Olson boundaries and possible changes to the Olson boundaries in light of a larger consideration of future memorial area. We do know that we have multiple schools in the memorial area that are currently and projected to be under-enrolled. I think at this time committing to a particular site would be foolish. We clearly have a motivated seller. If we were to purchase this, they would benefit in multiple ways. First, they would have our cash. Secondly, it would make their selling their other lots more attractive to say that this school district is planning for a school and has purchased a lot. I think that that we're supposedly getting it below market value, but I think that they benefit much more than we do from a purchase at this time. So I will be opposing.
Vicky.
I will also be opposing. One, we haven't had the enough from the hearing enough from the community. Two, it's too close to schools, and that we already have. But three, and here's the biggest one for me. We just decided not to spend $425,000 on redefining poverty, but we can afford $2 million for a school that's going to fundamentally exist where we don't know if there's going to be growth. To me, that just can't make sense, both economically and by individuals. Additionally, I need what I've heard from the people who I've heard from. I need more. I need more, and I can't support it at this time.
Could you guys weigh in? I would just love to hear the kind of, I mean, it is really close to an existing school, and I'd love to hear some of the logic and thought process. We know we need a school in this attendance area in the next 10 years, right? That's sort of math. Help us understand why here, and then I may have other comments.
Well, I'd be happy to at least address
Can we take a 5-minute bathroom
I think what might be the key opening point to this conversation, which is that we're not recommending that the board buy a land site tonight. I'll say that again. We're not recommending the board buy a property this evening. Rather, we are recommending that the board act on what's called an offer to purchase, which is a specific type of legal agreement that essentially sets into motion a longer process, including a 90-day inspection period, followed by a due diligence period, during which the public and any board member, anybody else who's interested, has an opportunity to learn more about this. So under an offer to purchase, the board is not bound to close on the deal. You can walk away if you're not satisfied with what you learn during that process. As you know, this property is not, even under this offer to purchase, set to close for at least a year. So, there's a progression to these issues, and we've done the work that we can do at the staff level, and now it has proceeded to where the board needs to at least sort of, it kind of enters into a public phase at this point. And so that's sort of the procedural, I think, key point for this evening. We're not trying to rush anybody into anything. And then as to the substantive issues, perhaps Andrew and I can share those.
Quick question.
Can I ask?
Because I was trying to understand this December date, so maybe that explains it. There would be no purchase prior to December 31st, 2018. So am I understanding that right then from what you're saying, the offer to purchase?
It could not happen
prior to
any sooner than 1 year. It could happen later than that. And you have an opportunity to walk away at multiple steps in this process if you're not satisfied with the location or the roadways or the site itself or any other, I suppose.
So we basically have a year to really look it over.
So are there any financial obligations at this point or any money that we would be leaving on the table if we did walk away later? Nothing?
No, there's no consideration exchanged at this point.
And then could you share, I guess, just a little bit of the background in terms of, you know, have there been other sites that we've been looking at in order to meet some of those growth needs? I mean, I'm in favor of proactively looking at sites out here, right? We know there are needs coming. Doing this early is wise, and time is wise as well. But just what other sites have we looked at?
Yeah, I'll start it, and you knows the details as well as anybody on this. I mean, the public record on what is called the Pioneer neighborhood on the far west side has been a matter of public record since as early as 2004, maybe even before that. But there's been a school site designated in the Pioneer area since that long ago. That is coming from the city, and those are their requirements for how they want to see that side of the community developed. We first raised it publicly in 2016 when we shared the Vanderwall report. We did a special call out on the Olson property and flagged for you that the Olson area. We flagged that the Olson Elementary School is going to be considerably over capacity once this area begins to develop, and indicated that we have no land sitting out on the far west side as a potential future school site. And you know the more recent conversation around long-range facility planning and so on. Andrew, you have anything to share about that?
Yeah, I would say this map, just for orientation, is from the 20-year projections. We did lead in our original presentation to the board of that series of projections, Olson as the very first case study. What we knew about Olson at that time is that it is a school that's still in a developing attendance area, and then given all of the development opportunities and then the timing of those, we could see it grow to about 135% of capacity by 2036-37 school year, that with the tail end of that 20-year window. Safe to say it's going to tip under those original projections around 27.8, over 100% capacity. And for planning purposes, we feel that 90% is ideal. That allows flow for common space scheduling, arrivals during the school year, that kind of thing. Based on the number of rooftops in the Viridian property that's being proposed, as well as other development plans in that area, we know that these could actually, these capacity rates could tick up 10 or 12 percentage points even further and happen a little bit sooner. So it's a matter of, you know, the market heating up and a lot happening in the last year that's helped us understand a little bit more of the dynamics in terms of timing and in terms of composition. So we have been looking at the area, and this is a rough map of the attendance, or the school district boundaries. So it's a little bit hard to see here, so I'm going to borrow Mike's pointer. So clearly you can see our property. That's a rough mark on the property that was made by hand. That's not a GIS accuracy, but that's where we place it. It's a little washed out on the screen, but you can clearly see some of these areas are blue, and those are areas that are currently MMSD attendance areas. Everything else that you see is yellow, belonging to Middleton Cross Plains. So while it's true that the city is going through a planning process for a lot of this area is simply not ours, at least currently. But we are asking for those conversations to occur. So as we talked last time,
Dome is in the school district.
Dome, I'm getting there as well. So for Middleton Cross Plains, when we said that we wanted to talk to neighboring school districts in this area to make better sense of boundaries, to get them contiguous to city boundaries, this is the exact area, one of these exact areas we're talking about. What's a little bit harder to see are all of these areas that are cross-hatched, which includes the area that we're talking about today. So these are properties, because of district agreements, will change borders when those properties are sold. So this is a matter of this whole property through here, excuse me. This property is what's referred to as Acacia Ridge. This is our property. You can see that we have boundary agreements with Middleton Cross Plains going all the way up to here. So all of this area would become school district area. That would become ours. So that's kind of the geography out there, a combination of district boundaries. About half of the planning effort that the city's undergoing right now is in another school district. We want to have those conversations with that school district and see what further develops.
Great. Dean, did you have a comment?
Yeah. I want this to happen for several reasons. Everything that you suggest that the city might happen may very well happen. The distance from another school doesn't bother me so much, but what we will have is an asset that currently we're negotiating under value, but still not don't think it's a cheap. It's if we decide to build a school on there or decide we want to go somewhere else, we've got an asset we can sell for more than what we paid for. We also have plans here. I'm going to at some point insist that we stop renting buildings to do alternatives in other schools and buy us a building or build one. Maybe that's a place where we can do it. I don't know, but there's $500,000 just in rentals that we won't have to spend. So should we build a school out there? I'm not certain yet. We haven't had that discussion, and that's not what's being proposed here. We're considering buying an asset that it's going to essentially be an investment. I've also talked about perhaps we should consider buying some housing and build some housing and attach it to our schools, because we are not in an affordable housing crisis. It's way beyond that. We are in danger of not being able to have school teachers be able to live in Madison. So maybe we should consider building some housing out there. I don't know. That is a discussion I'm going to bring to this board at some point. And maybe if we decide to do that, we'll have an asset that we can build around or sell. This is a good opportunity for us, thinking long term, that, yeah, we might put a school out there, we might do some other things with it, we might find that we want a school somewhere else and trade it for that place. So we'll be in a strong position at an asset we can buy now that'll increase in value. So whenever you turn in an offer to purchase, you'll build in contingencies that if they're not met, the board says we're out without anything. So we're good to go with that process. And from my perspective, I'm not locked into putting a school out there, but I am locked into thinking that this is a good piece of land to buy, and let's sit on it until we decide what to do with it.
Are there any restrictions? Sorry.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, I offered an inartfully worded motion too that may be part of the issue. I don't know the process for me offering to amend my own motion, but really what we're asking you to approve is the submission of an offer to purchase so we're not asking you to approve the purchase. Right? Really, the motion should say approve submission of an offer to purchase, because that's the step that we're at. And so
for us lay people, an offer to purchase sounds like
right. But right now it just says approve the purchase of, and that even kind of, and so
no, I know.
So so you want to amend this motion to say approve the submission
of an offer to purchase for Lot 313 Acacia Ridge, everything after that.
Could I offer a language to this? Whenever I buy a piece of property for work, one of the contingencies is that final board approval has to be one of the contingencies. Is that what you're going to? I mean, let's put that in there, because Now, we're really essentially authorizing you today to go negotiate this thing and come back to us once you got the deal set, and then we'll finally approve it.
Pending board approval. Okay, Mary?
I was reading the documents, and it seems to me, am I correct in that the seller isn't, just as we're not obligated to really buy, they're not really obligated to sell?
Yeah, I would say
because they have to close. They haven't closed. They don't own it.
Yeah, I would say the obligation. Yeah, I would say the obligation of the seller to offer this land is that a public school was contemplated in these plans at least as early as 2004. The original plan for this neighborhood goes back to 1990. So as Mike described, I mean, as community assets, schools are part of neighborhood plans. And in this particular instance, what was called the Dome Farm, or now Acacia Ridge, was slated for a school site. So that the kind of obligation, at least informal in terms of planning, was attached to it.
And Mary, your direct question is, the seller does have contingencies, just as the buyer does, to answer your question.
So, I mean, everyone here, I'm sure, probably not Laura yet, has bought properties. But one thing I would never do is just look at one. And it feels very strange to me that we would, especially if this is $2 million that comes out of the general fund, that we aren't even, we have not looked at any other options. And I think there's very good reasons which have been outlined as to why to do this, but it is also incredibly close to Olson. And as we try to make education accessible physically, transportation-wise, I can't get excited about this unless I know what the other options are and what other things we've looked at.
TJ, then Kate.
One question and one comment. The question is that in terms of our the contingencies involving, what's that? Oh, I'm sorry. The question is the contingencies, what contingencies apply to us? The only contingency I can find reading through the contract is that the offer shall be contingent upon the buyer's determination in its complete and unrestricted discretion that the property is free of defects and suitable for the development and use by the buyer as a school site. And I guess that, you know, I don't know real estate law language. Free of defects, I get that. I think that the introduction of the word suitable for development and use by the buyer as a school site would indicate to me that perhaps that would be something leading towards the idea of final board approval. But I'm not sure that that's how that reads in real estate law. I mean, and I guess
suitability clause, and the board determines suitability.
And that would be a generalized interpretation, and you're confident of that, yep, even though you don't have a law degree and you're not licensed to practice. I'm half kidding, but you know, taking legal advice from a business manager is not something I'm terribly. And Mike, I trust you, and I believe you've been through this, but we hired a real estate lawyer for this transaction for a reason, because they have expertise. And I understand, and this gives me more confidence, and I won't be upset if it passes because I have confidence in you, but there is that level.
That's right, and I'm not representing myself as a real estate attorney.
I understand that. I understand that.
But obviously, I've worked closely with our real estate attorney in this matter.
And the suitability clause functions in that way,
if
do you understand?
If it makes you feel better to direct us to go back and put in an explicit board wants final approval no matter what, you can walk away for any reason whatsoever. Go ahead and put it in the motion, and we'll add it to the offer to purchase.
And then the second comment is that, Dean, you spoke of this as being an investment. And I asked earlier today what the zoning changes and other changes that would be to make this attractive property to other people that we would have to get city approvals on if we were to sell it, if we were to treat it as an investment and sell it, and got an answer that we don't know that. And so I am not sure that this is an attractive investment, because if it's been platted for a school, and if to put it to a different use would require extensive city approvals, those approvals might not come. And in fact, it might be the city might prefer actually to use this, it's adjacent to their designated parkland, to use this as park rather than to make it an attractive thing to sell to a commercial entity. And without knowing that, I'm uncomfortable treating this as a possible investment.
Okay, Kate?
So one question and one comment. Are there any restrictions upon how we could use this piece of property if we wanted to use it for something other than a school?
It's an institution, so an institution.
Can you give me for example on
if
that?
we wanted it to be a training facility, an employment, I mean, I don't know, I'm just trying to, if it is going to be an asset, it has to be flexible and used, right?
I think the answer would be yes. Even the school itself would have to go through a conditional use permit. So, the city is going to closely regulate what gets purchased there. They have an obligation to everybody who lives in that area to make sure that what gets built there is suitable. So yeah, you can assume that if it were a training center or some other iteration of an educational facility, that it would require approval, as would even a K-5 elementary.
And then I just would strongly second Mary's comment to investigate other sites, right? We talked about an area around the Allied last week, right? I mean, I think there's several other areas that there's some interest in exploring. And as long as we have a year, let's do those things concurrently versus sequentially so that we can make an educated decision.
Yeah, there is a big picture in nature of this. So
okay.
This is the one that's got attention.
Okay. So we have friendly amendments to this motion here. I think what I'm hearing is that we want to amend the motion to approve the submission of an offer to purchase, and we want pending board approval. And I think we need to just call the question.
I agree.
Okay. So is that the way you read the motion now?
It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the submission of an offer to purchase for lot blah, 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 and to close no earlier than December 31st, 2018, which shall be contingent upon final board approval.
Okay. So we've been moved and seconded. So Laura, your advisory vote, please.
Aye.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposition?
Nay.
So I'm seeing 4-3 approval. So can I get hands for the approvals? So we have it passes 4-3. Okay. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, Wisconsin Association of School Boards 2018 resolutions. I move that the Board of Education approve the Wisconsin Association of School Boards 2018 resolutions, items 1801 to 1813.
I'd like to pull 1809. Oh, I'm sorry, 1806. 1806.
Okay, did we get a second?
Keith seconded it.
Okay, Lori, advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, 1806.
1806, there is one that asks for legislation for the state to fully fund as a categorical aid the cost of local public school districts of providing transportation to pupils who attend private and parochial schools through the taxpayer-funded voucher program. Currently, school districts are required to, without fully funded categorical aid, to provide these reimbursements to all parochial and private school districts. To me, that this creates a preference. It treats voucher schools more favorably than others. And to me, that's a scary and awful precedent to be doing. And therefore, I don't think that, and I understand that in Milwaukee and that the funding of transportation for voucher schools has become yet another drain on the public, and in Racine also, on the public schools, in addition to taking money off the top for at a per pupil amount. The transportation is functioning as a drain. But I think that this categorical should be fully funded for all public and private schools and not limited to just voucher schools. So I would ask that our representative oppose this.
1806.
1806.
So your revision is all public and private schools.
If you could propose, you're the representative, are you not, James?
Yes.
If you could propose a revision from the floor, I would definitely favor that and find that wonderful. But as written, I would also ask that you be instructed to oppose it. So I will do both of those as actions. So
I'll second that. Do both.
Okay, do we need to vote on that, Dylan?
Yeah, because he removed it, so now there is no guidance for you on 1806.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so it's just like a consent item.
I move we instruct our representative to seek an amendment to 1806 covering all public and transportation for all public and private schools with a fully funded categorical aid, not simply voucher schools, and if that amendment fails, to oppose 1806.
Second.
Okay, Laura, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Any opposition? I mean, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carries and passes 7-0. Is there any old or new business to be brought for the board tonight?
Holidays.
Seeing none, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Happy holidays, everyone.